In the tranquility of our suburban life, I stumbled upon a harrowing truth. My wife, the mother of our children, had been living a double life. What started as a nagging suspicion turned into a nightmarish reality. Late-night phone calls, hidden bank accounts, and secret rendezvous. Each clue painted a picture more sinister than the last. The depth of their deception was astounding. A second family, a hidden world where I was the outsider. As the pieces fell into place, I discovered their plan: to disappear with my children and our life's savings, leaving me with nothing but the ruins of our life. Shock turned to anger, anger to a cold, calculated resolve. I unearthed evidence, tracked their movements, and prepared for a confrontation. This wasn't just a tale of infidelity. It was a meticulously crafted betrayal, a conspiracy against everything I held dear. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. I had to protect my children, reclaim my life, and expose the darkness that lurked beneath our seemingly perfect life. Witness the unraveling of a web of lies, the emotional roller coaster of a man betrayed, and the fierce pursuit of justice. This is my story, a battle for truth, a quest for redemption. Stay tuned. Jack is running to escape the storm, and things are at their worst. He runs as fast as he can, pushing himself until he doesn't think anymore. The rain and wind turn the bright evening into a dark night in moments. At the crossroads, he chooses the path through the field. The leaves get stuck to his ankles. The flowers leave a messy yellow pollen on his skin and smell terrible. The rain pours into his boots, and the wind blows hard against him, making his body cold and helping him forget about the pain. He finally finds a bit of shelter in a hedge. His feet guide him down the grassy path without him thinking. His mind seems to drift away from his body. He wants to keep running, but he knows he needs to go home. Time will show him what to do next. When he gets home, it is dark and late. He hopes Caroline is asleep, but all the lights are on and she is in the kitchen. She looks up, and he sees a mix of feelings in her big brown eyes: relief, panic, regret, pity, and impatience with him. She comments on how messy he looks. Without replying, he turns to the sink and drinks directly from the tap like it's a fountain. After that, he takes a shower and goes to bed. There is no space for feeling sorry for himself here. Tomorrow will be better, but right now, he can't see how things could ever feel normal again. Next chapter. Tuesday is Damien's day. Caroline wakes up thinking about their meeting. These thoughts stay with her as she helps the children get out of bed, gets them ready for school, and sits them down to eat the cornflakes and eggs Jack had prepared before he left for work. She has little time to get ready herself, but she does everything carefully. She takes a shower, does her makeup, fixes her hair, and puts on her new business suit. Then she puts the kids in the car and rushes to Amy's school. As always, Amy runs happily to the playground without looking back. Ben, on the other hand, moves slowly to his school, joining the crowd with some reluctance but without complaining. With the kids taken care of, Caroline focuses on getting to work on time and faces some traffic. She manages to get to work with a little time to spare. She focuses on reviewing the contract and hopes her excitement isn't too obvious to her coworkers. At 11:30, she leaves work with her iPad to stay connected through email. Damien lives in a modern building in Dixboro, a small town 5 miles outside the city. She drives down the familiar road, enjoying the sights she knows well. Damien waits for her at the door of his 3-story home. He is tall and skinny, wearing a simple plaid shirt. They quickly embrace, and she leads him to the bedroom. Time was valuable. After that, they ate lunch that Damien had made earlier. It was a salad with smoked salmon, shrimp, and avocado. It was tasty, just like always. She wished she could have a glass of wine, but she had to get back to work. She wanted to stay calm, and anything related to Damien needed careful attention because of the big problem in her life. The affair, as she called it, was surprising and not planned. She never thought something like this could happen. Feeling a mix of shock and realization, she knew she had to control it. She would be careful. It had to stay a secret between her and Damien, and she would not let it affect her family. She met Damien during her lunch break. Time was short, and their communication was limited. They only spoke through work emails and a special phone, which she kept locked in her car. Damien was mostly okay with these limits. They helped him keep his single life separate, and he didn't want to deal with complicated commitments. Sometimes they found a chance to meet outside these limits, but only when she was sure it was safe. This was happening beyond her control, and she didn't want to make it a big drama. Her love for Jack was just as strong as ever. In fact, she felt even more love, which made her approach her husband and family life with more energy. Accepting her situation made her happier and more confident. She felt alive and realized what she had been missing for so long. Life continued, but it was more lively and focused. She made sure to pay attention to Jack, wanting to ensure her being away didn't hurt their relationship. It felt like they were doing better together than ever. She knew him well and trusted that he had no clue. He kept busy with his own hobbies and enjoyed playing games with the kids. Jack was loving at home and in bed, hardly questioning why she stayed late at work to make up for longer lunch breaks. She admired Jack for being understanding, kind, calm, and good with the children. She could feel his emotions, and if there was ever a hint that her secret life was bothering him, she would stop immediately. It would take strength to end things if it became necessary, but she felt she could handle it before it got too complicated. Living a double life was tough, but she managed it well. When she retired and became a grandmother, she would remember this time with pride and happiness. Living life to the fullest was something everyone was supposed to do. But for her, it felt like a heavy load, and her hidden life came with many practical problems. One of the nice things about her relationship with Damien was their shared love for theater and music. These were things Jack didn't care about at all. Jack disliked all forms of drama. That was his big flaw. While she loved stories and performances, the excitement of feelings, dance, and music were unknown to her family life, and she realized how much they mattered only because of Damien. He often suggested going to shows, but she often had to say no. It was too risky and didn't fit with the rules she set to keep Jack and the kids safe. She didn't want to spend her evenings away and didn't want to risk being seen with Damien in their small town. She wished he would move on, and she didn't like how much he wanted things his way. Excuses for being with Damien were hard to come by. Once, he took a trip while she worked late in London, and they went to the opera and stayed in a hotel. Another time, Jack took the kids to her parents' house for the weekend. Normally, she would go too, but this time she had a good reason. She was coming home from work later than Jack liked. She insisted he go without her. Then they decided Jack would stay the night to enjoy her father's wine without worrying about driving home. "Come back early or the weekend will be ruined," Caroline said as she kissed him goodbye. Within an hour after he left, she was with Damien. It was too late to make it to the show, but they had a lovely dinner at a restaurant. Damien knew a good place, and they stayed together until 3 in the morning. She was in her bed long before Jack got home, feeling tired and wanting breakfast. In many ways, she and Damien were a good fit. They watched movies while eating lunch, listened to music, and had fun. These were special moments when she could be herself without having to act a certain way to please others. Yes, Damien had requests, but they showed his love, and her happiness in trying to make him happy reflected how she felt. Of course she cared for him. They never discussed Jack or what their relationship might become, what they had felt too special to risk. Even when it came to giving gifts, there were rules. Damien could only give gifts that were temporary or symbolic, nothing that could make Jack suspicious. A book she could buy herself, or makeup that wouldn't seem expensive to Jack, or food that wouldn't leave a trace were fine, but no flowers, jewelry, or clothes. Even when they went out to eat, they did so whenever they could find the time in their busy work schedules. They drove quite a distance, and Caroline tried to pick a meal that wouldn't leave a strong smell on her breath. She ate lightly so she would still be hungry for dinner with her family later. All she needed was a plan and to stick to it. Damien was open about his choice to be single, saying it let him keep his home just how he liked it. He had many friends and liked spending time with them. Since he wasn't in a serious relationship, he had no problem introducing his latest girlfriend to his friends. At first, Caroline was nervous and wanted to ensure that his friends did not know Jack or about her other life. But she was used to being Damien's newest girlfriend and liked the rare chance to go out socially with others. She felt good knowing she had taken all the right steps to keep her secret. Still, she and Damien often preferred to be alone. But when they could, She enjoyed dining out with his friends. She understood his desire to show her off, and for her, it was a way to make their relationship feel more normal and less pressured. Another good thing about this relationship was how it helped Caroline feel more confident and energized at work. She was able to talk about her job with Damien in a way she couldn't with Jack, who was also busy with his own life. Damien helped her come up with new ideas to communicate better at work, which caught the attention of her bosses. The fact that such a smart man was interested in her made her believe more in herself and her ideas. Juggling two lives with Damien's support made her feel stronger. She felt a strange mix of emotions when, after a board meeting, the CEO pulled her aside. The CEO said she would likely be offered a new position as operations manager. In that moment, her heart raced. She wanted that job, but it hurt her to think she might succeed because of her secret relationship. Deep down, she knew her feelings were unreasonable. She told her boss she would decline the job offer. Given the situation, it felt wrong to accept, and she didn't think she could handle a family, a new job, and a demanding relationship at the same time. As she thought about everything for the first time, she questioned if she could justify living this partly hidden life with Damien. She and Jack had been married for 12 years, and that felt like a long time. They had a nice home, an 11-year-old boy, a 9-year-old girl, and a career that was becoming more exciting. Having a lover was never part of their plan. Caroline was not someone who flirted easily. She was quite serious. The first thing she noticed when she met Damien was his gray hair, which curled around his temples and ears. He was tall and wore a sharp, elegant aqua suit, along with a bright pink tie and perfectly manicured nails. He was part of a group of average management consultants that her company hired to help with planning. Caroline worked at a medium-sized market research company that did online and phone surveys. They felt pressure from a few big companies that were dominating the market. They either had to grow themselves or find a special area where they could be safe. The consultants helped them think about different future options to decide on a plan. There had been many unhelpful workshops, and Caroline felt like they were getting nowhere. The boring men in nice suits seemed to mock their efforts. But then she had a series of one-on-one meetings where she was asked about her expertise. She felt that they were finally getting somewhere, and she felt useful until her first meeting alone with Damien. She had never thought of consultants as real people. He made a model based on how much work they did, and his questions about her job were sharp and tough. After one meeting, he asked for another because they still had more to talk about. At first, she was impressed by how quickly he thought and how easily he understood her explanations and turned them into clear ideas. Their discussion was good, and she felt he really understood the details of her work in a way that no one else did. Only then did she notice how good-looking he was. He seemed fresh-faced and clean-shaven. She guessed he worked out or had fun with friends in the evenings. She liked that his fitness made him strong, unlike Jacques, who was thin from head to toe. His manners were also very good. He spoke in a calm and confident way, like many advisors do, always seeming to understand what others were saying. She felt comfortable talking to him about anything. Later, when the project was almost over, he asked her to lunch, promising to share what they had found in the report. She felt honored that he wanted to spend time with her. During lunch, they mostly talked about art and theater. At the start, with some polite questions, they found out they both liked Broadway musicals. Caroline began to share about her family, but quickly thought it might not interest him, so she looked for better topics. It turned out they had both seen an opera from a traveling company at Glyndebourne. They talked about music performances, and soon they couldn't stop chatting. It wasn't until they had coffee that they shifted the conversation to business strategies. The suggestions were surprising, and she listened eagerly to Damien as he made his case for them. She quickly decided she agreed with him. At that point, she had gotten over the initial shock. It all started at the very beginning of lunch. She knew right away that she could not hide her feelings. It wasn't because he was good-looking or because he understood her well. It wasn't just that he was smart and cultured or had a successful job. He had all those traits. But she felt a deeper connection to him, as if he was someone she should have known for a long time. The surprise left her feeling lost. They chatted about everyday things that didn't really matter, and suddenly she found herself in love. This feeling wrapped around her tightly like a strong grip. She could try to fight it, but she couldn't break free. At first, she didn't trust what she felt. She was a married woman with a family, and she was happily married. A woman like her didn't fall in love like this. Nothing could stir her feelings. Her love for her husband was strong enough to block any hint of desire. Her heart was already full. She wasn't a teenager anymore. She had control over her feelings and didn't think she could love this man, but she had never felt anything like this before. Her words became stiff, and she was sure she must have looked at Damien like a lovesick girl. He didn't seem to notice anything wrong. He was enjoying his meal and chatting easily, responding to her every comment. By the end of lunch, she felt she would have to be with him or feel empty forever. It was hard to think. Her first thought was that she would need to leave Jack and the kids to start a fresh life with Damien. She couldn't picture hiding behind Jack's back forever, worrying that she would forget some detail about a secret relationship. The idea of feeling guilty about lying to her husband and children didn't sit well with her either. She needed to find the courage to make a clean break. A week went by where she exchanged a lot of emails with Damien at work. They didn't talk much about their new plan because a report had caused a big argument among Caroline's bosses. It amazed her that her family life went on as usual. She tried to pull herself together and look into Jack's eyes, knowing that her love for Damien was taking over her. She wanted him to say something, to at least notice there was something big happening in her life. He smiled and kissed her cheek, completely unaware of her feelings. Instead of feeling guilty, she felt a strange sense of relief and joy that she had managed to hide this from him. It was shocking. She had fallen for someone she barely knew, and her husband hadn't seen a thing. How could he be so blind to something so big in her life? A wave of pride filled her. If Jack hadn't noticed anything, then how could he be hurt by her feelings? She and Damien decided to meet again. They said it was to talk about a report from the consultant. When she arrived at the restaurant, instead of greeting each other with a handshake, they hugged tightly. They were too excited to stand still or sit properly during their meal. She played with her food while he looked at her strangely. They had nothing to say, and they quickly left the restaurant. Damien drove them out of the town and down the winding roads to a field full of hay. It felt thrilling, and they didn't feel guilty. They returned to town only when the sun was setting and the shadows were long. The next day, Caroline rushed around the kitchen, getting everything ready for the kids. She started the washing machine and packed Ben's sports bag. While she brushed Amy's hair, she asked about her new teacher. Jack finished his coffee, cleaned the table, and loaded the dishwasher. He called the kids to gather their things, said goodbye to Caroline, and left. It would be a long day for him. Jack worked hard, never took a lunch break, and stayed until 7 at night. When he got home, dinner was waiting for him. But first, he went to the bathroom to splash water on his face. Then he found his kids. He felt hurt all of a sudden, and he found comfort in running and being with Ben and Amy. There was nothing better than seeing kids play to forget about grown-up problems. He played a video game with Ben and read a story to Amy. He tried to be present with them so he wouldn't think about where Caroline was. When Amy asked if she could wait for her mom, he said, "Not tonight, honey. She might be a bit late and they could say hello in the morning." He promised to read her another story. She cried a little but soon calmed down and fell asleep. Now Jack had only thoughts about Caroline and what he needed to do. The next day, he sat in front of the TV and couldn't understand how she managed it. How did she find time and strength to have an affair while also working full-time and taking care of the family? Tomorrow, Jack planned to face it no matter what. He wasn't sure it would change anything, but he needed answers. He felt scared of losing everything and being alone, but his anger protected him from feeling too sad. He would not let other people ruin his life, and he wouldn't act out of anger. He would go on as if nothing was wrong until he was ready to make a move. It was about 10 p.m. The news was playing on the TV when he heard the front door open. "Hey, honey! Are the kids in bed yet?" It was Caroline, looking bright and cheerful, even after a long day at work. How did she keep it together? And had she noticed she was calling him cute? "It's so nice to see you, Jack. I hope you had a good day. I'm tired. Hot chocolate and then bed. What a long day. Are you ready to come with me? You look terrible, honey," he said, stepping back as if she had just been run over by a stampede. "Been fighting for the team again?" She gave him a strange look. "I never understand what you mean, Jack. Our clients are mostly nice people, and I don't get into fights." Jack smiled inside, finding it funny that Caroline didn't get his joke. When he first found out about her lies, he decided to keep acting like nothing was wrong. But then he changed his mind and liked to make vague comments that bothered her without letting her know he knew her secret. It always worked, and she would pull back, confused. He learned the truth through small clues. It all began when she called him cute, the same word she used for her old boyfriend. When Jack first met her in college, there was a rude guy who stayed close to her but never talked nicely. She got rid of him after a semester and about a year later started dating Jack. The word sweetheart never came from her mouth. First, she called him my buddy, then my lover, and later dear and dearest. Now it seemed she had forgotten that sweetheart had bad memories attached to it, or that she never used it for him. That was until she met Damien. A few weeks before Ben's birthday, they were trying to decide what to buy for him. She spotted a computer game they thought he would like and asked Jack to check if it was the right one. He sat at the computer where the Amazon page was open and started looking at the details. He thought it looked good, but Caroline was somewhere else. Time was running out for getting it delivered the next day, so he clicked to add the game to the cart and checked out. Then something surprised him. The screen asked him to choose between their address and that of someone he didn't know. Damien caught his interest. He stared at the screen for a moment, wrote down the address, then canceled the order to check her past buys. There, he found a month-old order sent to Damien Curd at a stranger's address. It was for a CD of choir music. Then he returned to the game page, found Caroline in the kitchen, and said, "This is the same game. I left it open for you to buy," before heading to his office. A quick search on his computer found information about Damien Curd, a partner in a business firm and an expert in marketing. Could Caroline have bought the CDs for a work reason? Sure she could. If he had no other doubts, he might have let it go. But when Caroline went upstairs, he took her phone from her bag to check her contacts. There was no name for Damien. The recent call list didn't reveal much. He didn't recognize Damien's number, and there were no regular unknown calls. If Damien was someone from work, they likely only texted on a work phone. When he had the chance, he checked her car. The glove compartment was locked, but he opened it using the car key. Inside, he found a small bag filled with personal items and saw an unread message on the phone. It was from Demi. The message said, "Normal plan, can't wait, love you lots." It took him less than an hour to gather enough information to feel like he could ruin his family. That's how he felt at first. But after spending some time alone in his room, he started to think. First, he realized he needed to learn more about this situation. Second, he wasn't going to let Caroline decide what happened next. He didn't want to lose his children or damage their lives by breaking the family apart. It might take time, but he would figure out what he wanted and make it happen. He felt nothing but anger toward Damien, a bad person who had somehow gotten close to his family. So he decided to go for a run. He now had Damien's name and address, and after thinking for hours, he knew he had to learn more about this enemy. He took a day off work and drove to Damien's house. It was 6 miles away and took him about 10 minutes to get there. He parked down a quiet road and walked to the front door, but no one answered. He walked to the side gate, which was unlocked, and stepped into the backyard. A row of houses looked down into the yard, but he was willing to take a chance. The back door was locked, and all the windows were shut except for one in the bathroom on the second floor. There was a clothesline in the middle of the garden. He put on some gloves, took down the clothesline, and propped it against the wall of the house. He climbed onto the frame of the clothesline. Balancing carefully, he grabbed a drain pipe for support. From there, he stepped onto the fan's grill and then reached the bathroom window ledge. He pushed the window open, leaned in, unlocked the skylight, and climbed inside. It took him less than 5 minutes. After getting in, he closed the skylight and wiped away his footprints from the window and the toilet seat. He climbed down again. At first, he wasn't sure what to do next. He went down to unlock the back door for an escape route and then put the spinning clothesline back in place. He searches all the rooms for signs that Caroline was there. He doesn't expect to find a picture or a letter, but he looks through the open letters on the shelf and the photos pinned up in the kitchen. In the center of the wall, there is a large picture of a young man in a snug football uniform, holding a rugby ball under one arm and a shiny trophy in the other. Jack stares at this man, feeling anger rise in him. The young man looks full of life and happiness, someone who seems to have everything he wants. Jack feels uneasy about looking at the life of his wife's boyfriend, and it makes him feel sick. He goes to the kitchen and finds a set of keys in a drawer. One of them is a spare key to the front door. An idea suddenly comes to him. He leaves the house and drives to a store downtown to make a copy of the key. Half an hour later, he returns, feeling a sense of victory. He realizes he knows exactly what he needs to do. In Damien's office, there is an expensive computer with a big screen. Jack turns it on and sees that there is no password. Damien lives alone. He opens the internet and finds email in his bookmarks. He clicks on it, and the email opens right away. The username and password are saved on the computer. Jack takes a deep breath and sits down. He checks the time and glances out the window before looking at the screen again. The first thing he sees is his wife's email address in the inbox. There are many emails from Caroline. He clicks on the latest one. The message starts with, "Good morning, love. 1 day left until the big day." He closes his eyes, not wanting to read more. But there's more. "Listen, love. I have an idea to make us happier. Jack is supposed to take the kids to my parents' house on Friday night. I can have another late meeting and we can be together." She mentions that Jack has to drive a long way, but it would let them spend the evening together. "What do you say?" Damien hasn't replied yet, and Jack feels like he wants to respond for him. But he knows he shouldn't give Damien any clue that he has been there. Anyway, he has a plan of his own. Jack has a late meeting on Friday, too. The kid's visit to his in-laws will need to be changed. Suddenly, he feels disgusted with everything he has read and needs to leave the house, away from Damien. Feeling frustrated, he shuts off the computer, makes sure he didn't leave any traces of his visit, and steps out of the front door. At home, he has a lot on his mind. He sends a text to his wife. "Leaving early to pick up the kids from school. Trouble on Friday, late shift. Taking the kids to my parents on Saturday morning." If Jack needs any more proof of Caroline's betrayal, it's how she reacts. She can't hide her disappointment and tries to blame Jack instead. Of course, she can't explain why she's upset, so she points out every little thing he does wrong. She pushes away a dish he made and tells him it's not good enough to eat. Then, she scolds him for giving the kids sticky pudding. The kids shout at her in anger, and she slaps Ben. "What's wrong, honey?" Jack asks. "Did someone bother your strong will?" "Don't call me sweetie," she snaps back. "You know I don't like it." Later, while she waits for him to read her a story, Amy asks, "Why is Mommy angry with you? You're the best dad in the world, and I wish she wouldn't be." "She's just having a tough time," Jack replies. "She doesn't mean to upset you." Then he says, "Now pick a story." Soon they lose themselves in a tale about brave cats teaming up with mice to save the world from danger. In the next chapter, Jack wakes up the day Caroline meets her lover. He watches from the bedroom as his wife gets ready. It seems to him that she only frowns while she waits for him. Finally, when she's dressed and ready to leave, she says, "I'm sorry about last night. I had a hard day at work, but I feel good today. Let me cook tonight and make something we all love." "You do that," he says, looking her in the eyes. He surprises her with his calmness. "And don't wear yourself out or I'll trade you in for a fancy new model." "You wouldn't do that," she says quickly, looking down. "It's not funny, right?" She pauses, waiting for him to say more, but he just smiles and walks away. Not at all. He feels calm as he drives to work, but the urge to go back to Damien's house hits him hard. It makes no sense since he doesn't need any more proof of his wife's cheating, and he knows she will be there on her lunch break. Jack isn't the kind of person who sneaks around. He can't imagine anything worse than catching Caroline with someone else, but he gives in to the urge, changes his usual path, and feels guilty. He drives out of town and parks at a market. He calls work to say he's sick and asks his secretary to cancel his meetings. A heavy feeling settles on him. He doesn't wear gloves or ring the bell to check if the house is empty. Instead, he unlocks Damien's front door and steps inside. He's taking a chance because part of him wants a confrontation, a reason to act. He stops and listens. He hears a clock ticking somewhere, but the house is mostly quiet. He starts to feel like he knows Damien, as if they are friends, and oddly enough, he admires how easily Damien got what he wanted. His heart pounds in his chest. He quickly looks around, turns on Damien's computer, feeling the need to check the emails to see how the story goes. He reads the messages between the two lovers, trying to understand their mixed feelings of love and defiance. It's clear that they truly care for each other. Caroline's kind words are genuine. She tries to charm and tease, and is not shy about sweetening things by offering food or compliments. Damien, on the other hand, is a bit stiff and formal in his replies. He tries hard to show his feelings, but it's clear he loves her. When he finds out their meeting is canceled, he feels very sad. He reads Caroline's message saying the meeting on Friday won't happen. Jack has messed everything up. No meeting on Friday? Yes, I'm disappointed. But I promise to make it up to you tomorrow, sweetheart. Damien's long response shows he can't stand having his hopes raised only to be let down. Caroline needs to find a way for them to be together again. He tells her firmly not to play with his feelings because he has never felt this way about anyone before. It hurts him to share her with her husband. He is willing to suffer to be with her, but he asks her not to make it harder than it has to be. He wants to quickly read her letters and get back to work, but he stays longer, curious about his rival. He looks through the books in the living room. There are many new stories and DVDs, classic movies, old European films, music, opera, some jazz, and Broadway shows. He feels like a loser for letting it make him feel small, and he scolds himself. Sitting in the kitchen, he feels awkward and foolish, unsure of what to do. On a whim, he turns on the fancy coffee maker sitting on the table, grabs a mug from the cupboard, and places it under the spout. He checks the fridge for the milk and sees other food items, boxes of beans, salad, couscous, mozzarella, peppers, and tomatoes. There's also smoked salmon, Parma ham, and goat cheese, a ready-made lunch for two lovers. He finds a carton of milk in the door next to a bottle of wine. He takes it out, sets it on the coffee maker, and sits still as the machine hisses and grinds to make his cappuccino. It tastes wonderful. In a daze, Jack sits at the kitchen table sipping his coffee. The situation is hard to understand. How can she love this man and go on living at home as if nothing is wrong? But he knows that's not the right question. The real question is what this means for their marriage. There are no easy answers. It's not just about whether he loves Caroline. After being together for so long, it feels like a betrayal to a brother. He can even see how this hurtful act happened. Caroline is bold and adventurous, always wanting to enjoy fun things. That is one of the reasons he was first drawn to her. Yet she is also caught up in her own worries and fears conflict. She would rather break his new sound system and hide what she did than admit to it and worry about the results. For her, lying and pretending is an easy choice. It's part of who she is, and the stress of family life shows her weaknesses. Jack doesn't feel better about it, but the problem is too big for him to get angry. He wants to confront her. He wants to force her to own up to her wrong actions. But he has to think about the kids and bear the burden himself. That's what men do. Marriages break down all the time, and escaping from the damage isn't done by blaming one another. No matter what he decides, Caroline will feel pain. They all will. But his suffering has already started. Jack can hear Caroline's voice clearly in her emails. She makes comments that cut deep. He can't take it anymore. He gets up and walks around the house, imagining Caroline living there as his wife. She lingers in his mind, and he can picture her so vividly curled up on the couch, fixing her hair in the hallway mirror, making hot chocolate in the microwave. At night, with her head on the pillow, eyes closed, she would be turned toward him in their big bed. In the kitchen cupboard are their mugs, matched sets, just like at home. In the living room lies a loose disc from the latest DVD series, just like theirs. In the bathroom stands her toothbrush, the same brand and color as at home. The house feels like a cruel joke, replacing their warm and loving home with a cheap, fake version. He's fed up and feels a little crazy. He returns to the kitchen and, on a whim, grabs the lunch he made for her and her new partner. He puts the food in a bag and takes it to the car. He doesn't know why he did it or what Damien will think when he sees the lunch is missing and the coffee cup left behind. He stops on the side of the road and tastes the food, which he sees is from a fancy local deli. He isn't hungry, and the food isn't good. Suddenly angry with himself, he collects it all, including the wine, and tosses it into a trash can by the roadside with the fast food wrappers. Now he doesn't know what to do for the rest of the day. He doesn't want to go to work because he said he was sick and doesn't want to go home because he doesn't want to be alone. Not for the first time, he wonders if he has the strength to keep pretending. All his energy goes into holding things together, and it's too hard. It would feel good to decide that he can't handle it and just run away. Let his wife come home to an empty house. He can't do that with the kids, and he knows he has to keep going. He needs to get used to being on his own. So he goes home and falls asleep, waking up just before it's time to pick up the kids from school. Usually the first person to get home cooks for everyone unless they made different plans. Caroline often comes home late on the days she doesn't pick up the kids, but today he thinks she'll be back by 6. Now he wonders how often those late nights are because of meetings with Damien. The thought of her being with him makes his stomach turn. As he chops vegetables, he thinks about when his marriage went wrong. He must have let Caroline down and been too busy to see the signs. He had months to notice she was having an affair, but he didn't. Wasn't that enough proof that something was wrong between them? He believed they were a good couple, with her lively nature and his smarts. But now he wonders if she always looked down on his quietness and how he wasn't very fun. Maybe she just grew tired of him and wanted something else. A few minutes later, he pushed that idea away. Caroline was a strong person, and it's possible he was just unlucky. She met a man by chance and fell for him. She didn't mean to hurt him. She got close to Damien, and their feelings turned into love, putting her in a tricky situation. She got used to living a lie. He throws a potato in the sink and yells as loud as he can. She has messed everything up. She thinks she can just sort it all out. She thinks they can live like this, with her balancing between being a wife and a lover. There shouldn't be any pain, at least not for her. Maybe she thinks she's clever. Caroline has always been confident. She must have a plan, and he is going along with it. She must be feeling good. The kids come running in to see why he yelled. He quickly makes up a story about a funny joke. A few minutes later, Caroline walks in and helps him finish cooking. She seems relaxed with him and asks how his day was. Jack wonders if she is really hungry and wants to eat. He thinks it's odd that she can eat a big lunch and still be ready for dinner. "I just had a sandwich," she says, when he mentions it as they sit down to lamb chops, mashed potatoes, green beans, and gravy. No matter how much he looks, he can't see any sign of shame on her face from lying or worry about what she ate for lunch. He isn't hungry anymore, so he gives his chop to Ben, who is always hungry. He doesn't feel the need to talk to Caroline. The kids are busy enjoying their meal, talking about their teachers, lessons, and friends. He occasionally adds a comment, but mostly he just watches his wife. She put on her work clothes before starting to cook. Now, she's in a loose black top and pants. Her hair is tied back, and she washed her face clean of makeup. She doesn't have to look nice for her family. She's calm and cheerful, making jokes to keep the kids talking and glancing at her husband now and then. He looks back at her. I went out at lunch to a place called Dick's Burrow. I remembered there was an old hardware store behind the market. "Why did you do that, sweetheart?" he asks. She's confident. Even with the sweet nickname, she shows no sign of worry or shame. She doesn't even check to see if they had a spare cast-iron fireplace grate to fit our fireplace. "No luck, but they said they could get one if I took measurements. I'll probably go back next week. It's a nice little town. It's much quieter than here. Maybe we should move there. The commute isn't too bad." "I don't think so, dear. It's not great for the schools, and I like it here," she replies. "The kids won't be in school forever. Then we can go wherever we want." Is there a question in her look? Why is my boring, dependable husband suddenly saying this? He looks down at his plate, deep in thought. How could she be like this? He knows his wife well, but he can't express it clearly. She likes to play it safe and never complains about being bored. Plus, her job keeps her too busy to enjoy her free time. What she's doing feels like something wrong, like having two sides battling inside her, mother and lover. Two roles that fit her in different ways. He realizes he doesn't know her as well as he thought, and now he wonders if he still likes her. She isn't his friend. He lies in bed thinking about their marriage, which makes no sense. This is when couples who are sane break up because of confusing feelings that lead to unspoken thoughts. Why endure the pain? Why try to make sense of it when ending it feels like a way out? He could end the marriage and the problem would go away. He thinks he should do it, but he isn't ready. What holds him back is fear. Fear of failing and being alone. He knows he sounds weak. Next chapter. Living a lie has made Caroline scared. Every word she says and every word others say is checked, so there are no cracks in her shield. The more successful she becomes, the more she feels the need to keep that success. She doesn't ask herself why she is doing this anymore. What mattered now was that it had happened, and she and Damien had to let things unfold. She loves Jack and her family, but she loves Damien as well. Leaving him seems pointless. And anyway, she feels like she pays for her happiness daily by living a double life. It doesn't shock her anymore that this is her reality. Jack was working too hard. He led a big team at the bank, where he looked closely at numbers related to investments and loans. Caroline didn't really understand his job, but she admired how well he did it. He earned a good salary and often got nice bonuses too, but the job came with a lot of stress. Jack had to manage tough projects, and it was hard to work in a business that wasn't doing well. He usually kept his stress to himself, but sometimes he felt sad and hard to be around. He became quiet and didn't talk much, often snapping at the kids. Instead, he spent time watching sports on TV or reading about history, which was a hobby from his college days. Caroline wished Jack would do something fun or show some happiness. She never thought about being with Damien, another man who showed interest in her. She didn't blame Jack for his mood, but wished she understood better what he needed. She felt less than him, almost like a poor partner who couldn't help him. Her main goal was to make Jack happy, so she tried not to let Damien take her attention away from her family. Yes, there were weekends when she did escape from family activities, but she felt guilty, and it didn't happen often. Most weeks, she only saw Damien during lunch, and those quick meetings felt special. One nice thing about being with Damien was that they didn't argue about little things. They never fought over who would pick up the kids or why the milk wasn't bought. They spoke their minds clearly, and it worked well for them. Just driving over to his place made her feel lighter, and by the time she arrived, she felt years younger. The first hug and warm moments together were pure bliss. The excitement and quick buildup of joy felt wonderful. When they cuddled or shared a meal while watching movies, the time spent with Damien felt separate from her everyday life. It felt so good that it was hard to see it as something wrong. After spending time with Damien, Caroline went back to her family feeling refreshed and full of love. Everything seemed bright and clear. But when she was alone with Jack again, the first few minutes were tense. She worried he might know what she had done. She feared it showed on her face. But Jack would kiss her sweetly or joke with her, making it seem like nothing was wrong. Inside, she wanted to shout, "I was just having fun with someone else." But she felt happy and relieved that Jack hadn't noticed anything at all. Her worry about a couple of things came from her trying hard to hide the truth. Jack's biggest shock was when he told her he was going to Dick's Burrow for lunch. She wanted to believe she was scared, that she had just avoided trouble, but she knew that wasn't true. What she felt when Jack shared his story wasn't fear or guilt. It was a strange kind of happiness. It was like the thrill someone feels when they are saved just in time from danger. This feeling made her more understanding and kind towards Jack. She wanted him to get better, but she also knew there would be more challenges ahead. It was tougher to find a balance with Damien. He showed signs of worry and sadness as their affair changed from excitement to obsession. He loved Caroline so deeply that he found it hard to let her go back to her husband. His situation was the most uncertain, and he wanted to stay with her forever. When he suggested this, she casually dismissed him. "Come on, this is just an affair and it's working. You see me more than many lovers do. We have this figured out. The key is not to be greedy." But she felt lonely when he left. "You don't know how tough that is. You wanted a carefree life without ties. We're doing great, so don't mess it up. If only we could take a weekend away together. That could work with a bit of creativity." "No, I think you can handle things," she replied. "I have to be strong." Once, when they were cuddled up in Damien's soft bed, he asked, "Are we doing this right, or is it just a dream?" "I can't stand the thought of you disappearing," he admitted. "Don't worry," she promised. "What we have is good, and we know how to make it work. We'll be fine." But she struggled with the fear of living such a hidden life. "One mistake and it's over. Unless you leave your husband," he said. "I can't do that." "But we won't mess up," she replied. "Even if we do, we'll figure it out. Life is too good to ruin it." "But what if your husband finds out? How will you deal with that? He asked. He won't find out. He trusts me completely, that's just him. But if he ever did, I'd make him see it my way. I want more time with you, not less. I see so little of you, and it's not enough. You mean a lot to me. We have to stick to our plan, she said. That way we'll be safe. If we can't have a weekend, I want a full day together without stress, where I'm not always thinking about you going back. Come on, he urged. You're acting jealous. One day, an opportunity will come, and we'll have a great time. But you have to be patient. We can hope for this month. When he shook his head, looking down, she pulled him closer. Damien's charm often made her uneasy. Caroline didn't want things to be like this with her partner. He was supposed to be strong and understand that her husband needed care. She told Damien to stop, and to make up for it, they planned a day together. He said they just needed to find the right time. But she felt angry with him and thought he was being selfish. She had told him from the start how much she loved her husband and her family. She had given him a lot, and he shouldn't hold that against her. If he struggled with being her partner, he should think about how much harder it was for her. Still, his love surprised her in ways she hadn't expected. Of course she loved him. She wouldn't be with someone she didn't love. But her worries about their secret relationship were small compared to his strong feelings for her. He wanted to give her gifts and sweep her away, to claim her completely. This annoyed and frustrated her because it felt impossible. Yet she liked knowing he cared for her so much. He loved her more than most women. His wishes made her feel guilty because Jack, her husband, had not complained at all. She didn't think Damien deserved more of her time, but she realized she needed to focus more on her family. Just a week ago, she noticed how stressful things at home were becoming. There wasn't anything serious to worry about, but she felt like Jack was hard to talk to. He began to say things that reminded her of her secret life. Just the day before, at breakfast, he had complained about their coffee. "Why do we have to drink bad coffee here? We can afford better than this lousy stuff," he continued. "I bet most people drink better. Do you know anyone with one of those fancy coffee machines?" He looked right at her, making her meet his eyes. "Have you ever tried coffee from one of those?" "I don't know what you mean, Jack," she answered, trying to stay calm. "But if you don't like it, we can look at machines this weekend." "If you want to," he said. "I'd like to try it first. I'll find someone who has one and invite them over for coffee." "Go ahead," she said, feeling a mix of relief and excitement. But the talk worried her. Why was he upset about their coffee? He was the one who had chosen the coffee maker they had. Once she got back home, Caroline rushed to catch up with family life, cooking meals and taking care of the kids. The day Damien didn't come to lunch, Caroline was busy and didn't notice Jack wasn't there to say hi. She wondered what happened to him, but pushed that worry away and kept doing her chores. Jack didn't seem to know what she needed that day, but she thought she would try to talk to him later. When it was time to go to bed, Jack was still working on the computer. She offered to share a drink with him in the living room, but he didn't want to join her, so she forgot about it. When bedtime usually came, he was still focused on finishing a work estimate. He usually put things off and then got up early to finish them. This time, he said he wanted to keep working while everything was fresh in his mind. Caroline went to bed by herself. She felt sad that the little signs of love they used to share were rare now. They both had busy lives, and those small moments brought them together. A quick kiss, a gentle touch, or a warm hug while waiting for the kettle to boil. These acts of affection just happened without planning, so some days were full of them, while others were not. She couldn't even remember the last time Jack had made a move like that after the weekend. They hadn't been close since then, and they often missed chances during the week, but they always made up on the weekend. Caroline figured the answer to her worries was simple. She needed to get Jack to come to bed with her. The next day, she prepared dinner. When Jack came home, he didn't notice her greeting and rushed outside to play with the kids. Caroline wondered what was going on. She finished making lasagna, set the table, and put out bread and water. She added some olives and balsamic vinegar, which Jack liked, and called everyone to eat. The kids were hungry and had so much to share about their day, all of it good. After dinner, she bathed the children and made them brush their teeth like she always did when she was home. Jack then took them to bed, telling stories and chatting with them. Meanwhile, Caroline took some time to relax in the bath and gather her thoughts. She realized she needed to do more than just have a plan. She needed to truly be with Jack. This meant giving him her full attention. Eventually, he came downstairs and she was sitting in the living room in her robe with a magazine. "Would you like a drink?" she asked with a smile. "No, thanks. I have to be ready for work tomorrow." "There's trouble at work," he replied. "I have a way to help with the stress," she said, getting up from the couch and moving toward him. He looked surprised, stepped back, and pointed at her. "I've told you so many times not to put your glass on that shiny coffee table without a coaster." What was wrong? She couldn't remember him ever saying that before. "Come on, Jack, don't be rude. We don't worry about little things like that. It's silly in a house full of kids." She took a deep breath to stay calm. "Are you going to bed? It's getting late, and I thought it would be nice to go to bed early." Jack shrugged like it didn't matter. "I have a cold, and I don't want to catch it." He turned to her, and she looked at him, unsure. Still, between husband and wife, it shouldn't matter much. Maybe so, but I'd rather keep my distance. It's not worth the chance. She pulled away, feeling awkward again that Jack might touch on what she was hiding. In the next part, Jack sees that his plan isn't working at home. His relationship is tense, just as he wanted, but without hurting the kids. Caroline sees that she can't live a double life without trouble. But still, no one can stop her from having an affair. He needs to step up. Now, he notices they're meeting twice a week. Maybe because Caroline is upset by Jack's lack of affection. Perhaps it's a way to win, making things worse so that later they can get better. Caroline should see there is a problem in her marriage. Her husband and her lover aren't both happy. If she cares about her marriage, she needs to try hard to save it. The problem for Jack is that she doesn't seem to see this. He reads a bedtime story to his daughter and sits on the edge of the bed watching her sleep. Tears fill his eyes as he realizes he must do something. He has to be brave because what happens next will be very uncertain. He's thought about the risks, and they don't look good. But he has no other choices. He could lose everything important to him, not just his life, but everyone he loves. Fear can't stop him. He has to be strong. He knows what he must do. The next morning, Caroline gets up in London feeling down about her messy life. Jack is up early too, and she feels confused by his calm actions. He makes breakfast, listens to the news on the radio, prepares lunch for the kids, packs their sandwiches, and gets them out of bed and dressed for school. It all seems normal, but she wonders what has changed and why she feels uneasy. "What's going on, Jack?" she finally asks after getting ready to leave. "Busy day, lots to do. Work. Sorry I can't come back today. I know it's not fair that you have to run to school in the morning and evening, but I'll catch up next week." "No problem, Jack. You need to take better care of yourself. You work too hard and never take a break. When I come back from this trip, I will make sure you have some fun." "That's nice of you, but I'm fine, really. I enjoy spending time with the kids." They looked at each other for a moment. Then Caroline grabbed her bag and briefcase. She kissed him gently on the lips, just brushing the corner of his mouth. "Take care," she said, sounding a bit worried. "Be careful," he replied. "And don't call tonight. I'll take the kids out for dinner and won't answer the phone while we're out. Don't be out too late." "You too," he said as he turned away. She could tell something was wrong, but she had to go. Even though worry was creeping into her mind, she couldn't think about it now. She needed to catch her train. She drove to the train station, trying to understand what just happened. What did he mean by "don't call"? Of course she would call. And he could have sent her a text to let her know the kids were okay. It felt like he didn't want to talk to her. Feeling a bit relieved, she got on the train and pushed her family worries away for now. Damien was waiting for her. As always, he looked great, easing her worries and bringing excitement to the day. He was in a good mood. For a little while, he had her all to himself and was full of ideas for what they should do. They quickly made plans. Shopping in the morning, lunch, check into the hotel, rest in the afternoon, and then see the show Anything Goes later that night. It sounded like a perfect day. They found a fancy oyster bar for lunch. Damien suggested she try some champagne. She would have rather stayed clear-headed, but agreed to a glass with smoked salmon and cream cheese and brown bread. They sat on high chairs at the bar, leaning into each other. "Here's to many happy days," Damien said, raising his glass to hers. Just as she was about to reply, his phone rang, ruining the moment. She took a sip of her wine, bit into her sandwich, and noticed his face losing its color. What was going on? He looked angry as he listened to the call. "Are you sure this can't be happening? I got a letter, but I'm not at work right now. I haven't checked my personal email since this morning. This must be a mistake. I'll call you back." Damien put down the phone and picked up his iPad. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Damn! What happened?" He didn't answer right away, fiddling with the iPad. "Just give me a minute. Something came up." She stared at him, forgetting about her food. This was not a normal work problem. After a few minutes, he grabbed his phone and called again. "I can't see the message. There's nothing in my inbox. Are you sure it's not a scam? Please send me a copy." He hung up, but before she could speak, his phone rang again. This time, he looked serious. He listened without saying much and ended the call with, "Yes, sir." Now he had the chance to look at her and he felt angry. Someone is playing tricks. This morning, a message went out from my personal email to everyone I know. It says we are together and claims we met at your job. But how could this happen? And why did it come from your email? Caroline felt confused about what Damien was telling her. "Are you saying someone got into my email and told everyone about you? And they said bad things about your job like those are my views? That was my boss on the line. They sent the letter to your people too. And now they want to know what I've been doing. You know some of them didn't like our work, and now they want to know if I was honest with them or if you influenced me too much." They stared at each other. Caroline's thoughts had softened because of love, but she was still trying to understand what was going on. It couldn't be serious. It must be a misunderstanding that would get fixed soon. So what if people at work knew about her? But it did matter because of Jack. Messages kept popping up on his phone. He looked at them and at his iPad and shook his head. "Caroline, I have to go back." "But you can't," Caroline thought, holding back tears of worry. "How could this hurt us?" "Come on, Caroline. It had to be your nasty husband who did this. Think about it. Remember when my lunch disappeared from the fridge?" He stopped for a moment. "Yes, that one. That guy has been in my house. This is some sort of sick revenge. He must have sent that message. Where is he now?" "At work," Caroline said, trying to understand. "But what do you mean? Jack doesn't know about us. I'm sure of it." Just this morning, she remembered Jack's calm face as she got ready to leave. Why did she push the issue? He knew nothing. The dread of the whole situation hit her, and she choked on a piece of bread. Damien turned his iPad to show her. The whole screen was her graduation picture, bright and clear. "What's he doing with that?" She started to cry. Next chapter. The door in front of Caroline has closed, and now it's time to act. Jack realizes he has let fear and sadness hold him back for too long. He thinks of what he has done and remembers the saying that every problem is also a chance. He has to protect the kids. But this lie about family won't help them. Caroline. His marriage to a wife who lies and cheats has no future. He cannot be responsible for her actions or their good times. He cannot let himself be stuck in an uncertain future. There are money issues, the house, and other practical matters to think about. There are happy families who live on very little money. They find a way to get by. Work? Forget about it. He knows what he needs to do and he has the energy to do it. Yes, he has waited a long time, but now it's time to take action. He puts the kids in the car and hands them notes for their teachers. "This is to tell them I'll pick you up at lunch," he says. "I have to meet someone later, so I can't promise when I'll be back. But I'll return before class ends. We'll go together and have a break." "But I don't have to go to French class this afternoon?" Ben asks. "That's right. Just this one time. I'll quiz you on your words in the car." "I'm not singing with Miss Pritchett. She has cuts on her arms and keeps sniffing," Amy says happily. "We'll get dinner on the way home," Jack adds. "Cool. I want fish and chips with lots of vinegar and ketchup," Ben says. "You have to behave first, and then we'll see what we can do." The mood in the car lifts, and they sing songs together as they drive to school. Jack drops them off and drives back down the road to Damien's house. This time, he feels less confused and hurt. He stops right in front of Damien's house. He puts on gloves, rings the doorbell, and after a moment uses his key to enter. He walks to the computer and turns it on. He opens Damien's email and finds a message he has seen before. It's an email Damien sent on Christmas to about 100 people. It has photos of his year, his new house, vacations, surfing in Australia, skydiving in Arizona, skiing in the Alps, and the rugby matches he has won, along with the awards he received for being the best player and doing charity work. In his own eyes, he thinks he is a great man. Jack quickly rereads the message to remember Damien's chatty, boastful tone, then copies the list of people it was sent to into a new message. The names include family members, work friends, and people he knows from different hobbies. He then opens another email that has a list of work contacts, including one from Caroline's job. He pastes the email addresses into his new message and clears his mind. He starts writing, "Hello, family, friends, and co-workers. I have exciting news for you. Open the attachment and raise a glass to my beautiful new girlfriend, Caroline. Isn't she amazing? And we're having such a great time together. I found this lovely lady during one of my work trips out in the country. Her bosses were not nice people, greedy and foolish. I handled them easily. And sweet Caroline was my reward. The only problem is that she is married and has 2 young kids. But I'm working on it and will tell you when I talk to her about her husband. Then we'll come and visit, and you can meet her in person." Jack pulls out a memory card and attaches a file to the letter. It's a photo of Caroline from her MBA graduation, and she's smiling brightly. She looks happy and pure on the day of her success. It's a picture Jack has always liked. He presses send, deletes the saved copy of the message, takes out the memory card, and turns off his computer. 20 minutes after he walked into the house, he is back in his car at the Dicksboro exit. He vows never to come back here again. On his way out, he throws the extra door key out the window. He feels better than he has in days. At home, he showers and changes clothes for his afternoon meeting. He grabs extra clothes, game consoles, and books for Ben and Amy. After lunch, he goes to pick up the kids. 8 hours later, the 3 of them sit in a cafe in Brighton, enjoying fish and chips for dinner. Jack is tired, feeling a bit happy, and he doesn't rush to answer his kids' many questions. The kids are full of energy. They have loved their surprise day off from school and are excited about the food and fresh air. Jack feels his own energy fading, knowing he still needs to drive home. He goes to the bathroom and checks his phone. There's a message from Caroline. She's home, asking where he is and wants him to call back right away. The stress from the email hits him hard. He turns off his phone and heads back to his kids. He isn't ready to leave yet, so he suggests they have ice cream while he drinks coffee. Why not stay the night? There are hotels by the sea, and tomorrow he can deal with Caroline later. He tells the kids about it, and they are excited to stay overnight. In the morning, he'll drop them off at school on the way home, and they'll be a little late. First, Ben says he wants to go to the beach before they drive home. "But I don't have a toothbrush," he says. "I need panda and teddy bears," Amy adds. Jack reassures them. "Don't worry, your teddies can go on vacation too, and I can buy toothbrushes. We'll wake up early and walk on the beach before breakfast," he says. He goes into the first hotel he finds and gets a room for everyone. It takes some time to settle his tired kids, but finally, he gives them a bath, tucks them into bed, and they fall asleep. He doesn't stay awake for long either. As he lies in bed, he sends his wife a message. "The kids and I had a great day at the seaside. We'll be back tomorrow." Turning off the light, he thinks about the day. He visited Professor Pickering, who guided him on his master's thesis, and he remembers all the years of research he spent on his doctoral work before family life took over. Jack had called the professor a week before. He wanted to ask if he could start his doctorate again. The professor agreed to come over and talk about it. The kids sat quietly in the corner of the professor's messy office with their books. They were told to behave. The meeting went well. Jack kept reading and found new ideas about his study, economic history, especially about trade and shipping. They had a lively conversation about the current debt problem and government help for shipping in the 1800s. Jack had written about this when he was a student. It felt good for Jack to talk about things he liked and forget about the sad events happening around him. He relaxed until his daughter Amy interrupted. "Daddy, I don't understand a word you and that man are saying." Jack and the professor laughed. They then joked and talked about what it would be like for Jack to be a student again. He wanted to work on his doctoral dissertation part-time. Maybe this would convince his boss to let him work fewer hours. The professor also found him some support money that could help. Now, lying in bed, Jack thinks about whether he should leave his job and study full-time. He thought maybe Caroline could handle the finances and take care of the family. This idea was tempting, and he went to sleep feeling a little better than before. The kids woke him up by jumping on the bed when the first light of day came into the room. He got them ready for school so they could go back home. They walked across the wet sand at high tide to the pier and then back to the hotel for a big breakfast. After that, he drove home and stopped at the school to explain why they were late. Amy's teacher looked unhappy and said, "Your wife called. She didn't think Amy was coming today." Jack replied, "She's on a business trip and doesn't know what's going on." Amy added casually, "We were on vacation at the beach with Dad." Jack thought conversations like this might happen more often now. He smiled at the teacher, trying to show he meant well. He thought Caroline would be at work, but he didn't want to go home yet. Instead, he drove to work, wrote a resignation letter, and sent it to his boss. He had just received his yearly bonus, and his recent review praised his work on a project that studied financial responsibilities and bought a smaller competitor. This letter would be a big surprise, just like the one from the day before. He planned to tell a few co-workers what he did and expected them to be shocked. He saw no reason to wait. On his way home, he saw Caroline's car in the driveway. He wasn't sure if he should feel happy or not. Now is a good time for them to talk. He walks into the house, and she is quickly cleaning the kitchen. She turns to him, and they stare at each other without saying a word. She looks more upset than he does. Ben says calmly that he only missed his first class. He talked to the teacher so the kids wouldn't get in trouble for being late. He drove them to Brighton. She looks confused and nods, still silent. Finally, she asks if he wants coffee. He nods. She goes to her office and turns on her computer. He sees many new emails. They all ask if it is true that he and Caroline are breaking up. The news feels heavy. Caroline comes to his door and tells him to have coffee in the living room. He follows her inside and sits in a chair. She sits at the edge of the couch, trying to keep eye contact. Her voice is steady, but he notices when she pauses, her eyes drop, and it takes her some time to gather her thoughts. "I take it, you know." He nods, and she adds, "And you got the letter." He doesn't answer. He has no reason to respond. "It's wrong, and I don't want to feel bad. I see I can't hide this from you, Jack. The man I love, you mean everything to me. I will love you forever. I thought it was best not to tell you, but it was hard to hide the fear that you might find out. Damien and I talked about it a lot, and we agreed that you should know one way or another." "You found out?" She explains. "Damien and I are dating. I love him. I love you too. And yes, we have been together. I need to tell you. Please don't take it personally. I wanted to tell you before, but I was scared to hurt you." His wife looks down at her hands. With bravery, she raises her eyes, but only looks at Jack for a moment. After a bit, she speaks softly. "Damien is a good man. If you gave him a chance, you would like him. You have some things in common, and he treats me well. He helps me be a better person. And you would gain from that. He enjoys simple things like dinner, movies, and walks in the park. We spend a lot of time in the park. I watch the flowers bloom. I know you might think I annoy you, but he listens to me and helps me sort out my thoughts. He lets me pamper him and tells me I am special and beautiful, and that he is a lucky man. I come back to you feeling so happy. I have so much to give you. Life is so full. I thought you might have noticed." He shrugs. "I noticed you were unfaithful to me. How could you think I wouldn't?" She shakes her head but waits to respond. "How long have you known him?" She looks at him now. "Only 3 months since we fell in love." He asks, "When do you see him?" She replies, "When you're not around. I was feeling uneasy." She smiles, feeling good about her honesty and taking courage from his questions. "Please, I love you very much. I don't care what you think anymore. I'm happy you're not upset, but your feelings are hard to read. Just tell me what's on your mind. I'm feeling dead inside." "No, I mean I'm thinking about what you've done. How can you be so clueless?" He was being strangely honest. What is he thinking? Anger comes and goes like a plane flying low, leaving his heart racing. This talk is too hard for anyone to handle. "Jack, you won't suffer. Just let me be free." There's a side of you that I never had. I need friends, fun, and laughter, but you don't want that. Damien enjoys my playful side. We have a great time together. You want peace. You like to sit alone with your books and your thoughts. That's the time I spend with Damien. Are you really okay with me seeing someone else? Jack feels cold and sick, like a soldier trying to figure out where he was shot after an attack. His thoughts are spinning. This talk is worse than he thought it would be. All the feelings he pushed away for so long are now out in the open. Caroline watches in shock. I see you're in pain, and I'm sorry I caused this. Neither of us wanted this, and it's really embarrassing. I'm asking you to think about me too. This is hard for both of us, and I need your help to get through it. We should support each other. He can't look her in the eyes now, scared to show his weakness. But he speaks clearly. If you want a divorce, just say so. Otherwise, I don't think we need to talk anymore. Oh, and I'll be living in Brighton during the week, so you'll need to figure out new plans for the kids before and after school. I'll come back on weekends to help with them. Also, I quit my job, so after this month, you'll need to pay the bills at home. She looks horrified. Jack, what have you done? What about the kids? Did you even think about them? You didn't plan this out? No, Caroline. You're the one who didn't think. I've had time to figure out what I want. I just didn't feel I needed to ask you about my choices. I'm going back to school. I'm getting my PhD. I'll rent a place near the university library during the week and come home to our kids on weekends. You're leaving me? He shrugged. You've been gone for a long time. Call it whatever you want, but this shouldn't change much for you. You can see as many people as you want. It doesn't matter to me, but you'll need to take care of the kids during the week. I'll take care of them on the weekends. Is that too hard for you? This isn't a good plan. You need to be reasonable, Jack. It's too late. It's already done. You should think about who is going to pick up the kids when school ends. Maybe I can come back on Fridays. I won't make it hard for you. You are making this more difficult than it should be. You don't like me. I'm ready to move on. I don't care what you think or how it affects you. One more thing, he says. If I ever come home and find your boyfriend here, I will be very angry. I will deal with whatever happens after that. Keep him away from my house and my kids. If you want to see other people, go to some shady hotel. Yes, he wants to hurt her feelings, but he also wants to do what is best for their kids. What is really unfair is how he acted without talking to Caroline first. There's also the problem with the mortgage. He won't be paying for it anymore. His pay has gone down. Caroline should manage the payments, but he knows money will be tight. She won't want to pay for after-school care either. The best solution, he thinks darkly, is to use his flexible hours to leave work and pick up the kids himself. He falls asleep reading a story to his daughter and wakes up at 4 a.m. on the bed next to her. He goes downstairs and falls asleep on the couch in the living room. Soon, he is asleep again. In the next chapter, the new plan starts right away. Jack wakes up early to pack the car for Brighton. He drops the kids off at school, goes to work to ask for time off, picks up the kids after school, and then heads to the university for meetings and library work. I won't stick around and mess up your life. I'll start my research right away, and my bosses can reach me if they need to. I have enough vacation to last until the end of the term. What will we tell the kids? She asks, sounding robotic. I'll talk to them on the way home. They won't like it, but it's better than dealing with a wife who is unfaithful. They will be okay. I promise to see them every weekend and during breaks. I'll do my best to have them with me. But what about my feelings? What about yours? The more activities I plan for the kids, the happier they will be, and you will have more time for your boyfriend. You are a tough man, Jack. You know what I mean? I don't want to be alone. I want my family to be together. Everyone. Sure, you will want to be with your boyfriend when the kids are not around. Actually, you can call him your partner. We can still be married. But I am not your partner anymore. That's not what I have with Damien. It's not a real relationship. It is just an affair. I have already explained this. Don't think it is more than it is. I don't care how you say it. You love him and rely on him. It feels like he is your partner. No, you are mixing everything up. You are my partner. You are the father of my kids and my husband. Nothing should come between us. Jack pauses for a moment before he speaks, calming himself down. Honestly, Caroline, you need to face this messy situation. A chat is okay, but I am busy. No, please don't leave. Don't turn away from me. For the first time in a long while, she lost her calm and stood up. Her voice was loud. Tears filled her eyes as she reached out to him. We need to talk about this. I've tried hard to understand what happened. You need to think about this too. Just give me a little time, please. He laughed, but it was a mean laugh, and then he walked out. Caroline felt like she had been hit hard. When she called Damien for support, he didn't help at all. He couldn't understand why she hadn't told Jack about the letter. He pushed her to do it right away. Caroline wanted to crawl into bed and never get up, but she knew Jack would be home with the kids soon. She didn't like to think too much, but her talk with Jack played over and over in her mind. She realized that Jack had known about Damien for a long time but hadn't said anything. That shocked her. She had never thought about what would happen if Jack found out about the affair. She had pushed away all those scary thoughts. Now she understood how careless she had been, thinking she could deal with anything without really thinking it through. But Jack's reaction caught her off guard. He didn't fight, shout, or cry. Instead, he just looked cold and upset, like she had let him down. Why hadn't he tried to stop the affair or fight to bring her back? He had let her go. And strangely, this made her feel that her actions were less important. She wanted to shout at him, "Jack, it's not the end of the world. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes to help you." But he wasn't there to listen. Later, their kids ran into the house full of excitement. "Mommy! Daddy's going to live in Brighton!" Ben yelled, bursting through the door. "It's so fun there! He says next time we can ride the rides at the fair! And I'm going sea fishing too. We have to wake up before dawn." She smiled and nodded, but tears filled her eyes. Then Amy jumped into her arms and pressed her face against Caroline. "I want to go with Panda to Daddy as soon as I can because he's going to be lonely by himself," she whispered softly. "Did he say that?" Caroline asked gently, not knowing what Jack had told them and unsure how to reply. "He said there are many people at the university, but he feels lonely when he's not with us," Ben answered. "I know you get to see him a lot." "Yes, but I'll have to read you bedtime stories during the week instead of Daddy," Caroline replied. "That's not good. You're always too busy to read it right," Ben pouted. "I can read by myself and save the stories Daddy likes until he comes home." Caroline tried her best to comfort them but kept glancing outside, hoping to see Jack come back. Finally, she asked Ben, "Where's your daddy?" "He said goodbye in the car. He had to hurry and said he'd pick us up from school on Friday," Ben replied. "I think it's a shame he's not here." "Make sure to tell him, Mom." Caroline started to see just how complicated her life was becoming. There were so many issues that she felt lost about what to do. She was hurt by Jack's decision to turn her down and how he just wouldn't listen to her side of things. Why couldn't he see that she had to go through with this? If she didn't, she would always feel like she had lost a special chance to truly know herself. He was being unreasonable, but if she was honest, she should have seen it coming. That's why she had kept her relationship a secret, even though it made her feel guilty and uncomfortable. She thought love was important and that they would find a way through. She loved him, and she believed he must still care for her. It was hard for her to think he could just stop loving her after everything they had shared. But when she looked into Jack's eyes, she saw that he didn't care anymore. He had already moved on in his mind. As she tried to relax, another problem hit her: money. How could Jack think she could survive on her pay alone? Yes, she earned a good salary, but she was already broke. Saving money was never her strong suit, and she still had a big mortgage to pay. To make matters worse, there were issues at work with emails. When she got back from London, she went to work and was quickly called into a meeting with one of the high-ranking bosses and the head of HR. They grilled her for an hour about her relationship with Damien. They wanted to know how it related to a report that some of the directors didn't like. She kept saying that her relationship started after the report was written and had nothing to do with work, but there was no proof, and she knew she had talked about the report with Damien. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that she was no longer seen as a valuable team member. They hinted that they weren't sure if she could stay in such an important role, especially since it looked like she didn't have good judgment. If she lost her job, she and her kids would be in big trouble. This thought kept her awake at night. She couldn't turn to Damien for help. He had his problems at work too, and she felt like he was blaming her for the situation. His bosses were accusing him of having an improper relationship with a client while pretending to work. To make things even worse, they said he let things get unprofessional and hurt the company's reputation. His defense was that he hadn't sent an important letter properly. It wouldn't be too hard to find out the IP address of the computer used to send that letter, but it turned out it was his own computer after all. He thought Jack had broken into his house and sent the email, but people doubted this idea. There was no sign of a break-in anywhere. However, he had some proof, though not strong, that he had been in London when the email was sent. He asked Caroline to make Jack admit he was the one who sent the message. Caroline knew Jack would never confess. Her once simple life was now filled with chaos. When she started her affair, she never thought money would be a problem. She saw Damien as someone who could help cover the extra costs like hotels and meals. Jack actually made more money than all of them. His decision to quit was surprising and hurtful to the children as well. Caroline worried about how she would pay the mortgage, bills, and buy food. The thought of asking Damien for help seemed impossible, but she considered it anyway. Why not ask Damien for help? In the past, lovers often supported the person they were with, but she felt strong and didn't want to show weakness by asking for money. In the end, she decided to tell Jack that if he couldn't help financially, she would have to ask Damien. Jealousy can make people act kindly. Amy started carrying her toy, Panda, around the house and only put it down when Jack came home for the weekend. Caroline thought this was odd for a girl of 9 and was embarrassed when Amy wanted to take Panda to school. She ended up spending time trying to calm her daughter down when all she wanted to do was scream. Meanwhile, Ben complained about the dinner she made. "I don't like onions and cabbage, and you always cook that when I come from Daddy's," he said. "You'll eat what I cook, and it will be what we can afford," she replied. During Jack's first weekend home, they barely spoke to each other. Jack was mostly with the kids. Caroline tried to find a good time to talk about the future, but it never happened. On Monday, he left, taking the kids to school as he drove out of town. When Caroline got to work, she was called to another meeting. This time, it was with the head of Human Resources. They offered her a new job as head of administration, replacing her old job in operations. The main office no longer trusted her judgment and didn't want her working with clients anymore. She would keep the same pay, but if she didn't agree, there would be a note in her file. A serious hearing would start with a panel led by a board member. Caroline knew they would look closely at her actions related to the consultant's report. She understood that she had to accept her new responsibilities. She felt lucky to have a job, but she also believed that this new role was actually a step down. When she returned to her desk, she felt embarrassed and very angry. Why was she being punished for something she didn't do? Her problems at home had nothing to do with her work, and the letter everyone talked about was fake. On Monday evening, she wrote to everyone who had reached out to her after receiving an email from Damien's account. This included her parents and many friends. She thanked them for caring. "I can't say much, but yes, Jack and I are having some issues that we are trying to fix. The letter you saw was a trick, and it has caused me a lot of pain. Please don't add to this and don't believe everything you see online. The great news is that after working for so long at the bank, Jack has decided to return to school to earn his PhD. This will need some sacrifices from all of us, but I know we can do it. It's for a really good reason. Love from Jack, me, and the kids. I hope to see you soon." On Tuesday, Caroline felt strong as she made her first trip to see Damien since the accident. She had dropped the kids off at school so she could only visit after the morning rush. She had to pick them up later in the day and also had a meeting at her new job, which made her feel anxious. She liked being with Damien, but he seemed tense and distant. He didn't dress nicely for her and barely spoke. Afterward, they shared coffee and the food Damien had brought, even though neither of them felt hungry. They couldn't enjoy their time together because the conversation was too serious. Damien still wanted proof that Jack had sent the letter and pressed Caroline to make Jack confess. "Jack isn't home. He quit his job and is in Brighton this week. He isn't in the mood to talk," Caroline said. This news made Damien look pleased instead of disappointed. "Tell him he'll lose everything if he doesn't come clean," he insisted. "Don't push me. I don't even know if Jack wrote that letter," Caroline replied. "You might have other enemies." "Use your head," Damien said, clearly frustrated. "Who else would want to hurt you? Who knew about us and could have taken your picture?" Caroline paused for a moment and then quickly said, "I'll do what I can, but can we focus on us too? We can't let this mess ruin everything for us. Can we agree on that? But we need to sort out our jobs first to move on, he said. I'm glad Jack isn't around. Now I can have the time I deserve from you. She wanted to remind him that she still had her kids and that she would do everything to get Jack back. But they were running out of time. She came back from visiting Damien feeling shaken and confused. She didn't understand why she felt this way. She never thought that Damien cared for her or that he was there for her. With Jack gone, she needed Damien more and didn't feel any guilt about it. But when it came to talking, he was no help. It felt like they were strangers. She told herself that they were both stressed and busy. Things would get better, but deep down, she worried if they only had fun together and nothing more now that Jack was out of the picture. She knew she was asking for too much from their relationship. If that was true, she would have to find the strength to fix things with Damien and also work on her relationship with Jack. She told herself that Jack would come back once he calmed down. He would see it was best for the kids, and they could find a way to work things out. She thought Damien would not be a problem if she could keep her men separate and show both of them that she loved them. Damien was worried about his job, and Jack was upset and proud. It was nothing more than that. Jack didn't have any money, so he would have to come back home. Every night, Caroline returned to her lively children and had no one to help her when she put them to bed. She felt tired and found nothing to enjoy. She disliked her new job and was always worried about money. Each night she faced the hard truth of her choice. She had to choose to either stay faithful and save her marriage or take a chance and risk losing Jack. She had picked the risky path, and she knew she could only blame herself for how things turned out. It was embarrassing to think about how much she looked forward to the weekend. Instead of dealing with two unhappy kids, she dreamed of being with charming Jack and her excited children who could barely sit still for dinner. She made a family dinner, and Ben didn't complain. Jack shared stories of his week with the kids. He worked at the library in the morning, jogged at lunchtime, and gave lectures in the afternoon. Caroline listened closely but didn't say much until later. When the children were in bed, she spoke to Jack. "It's really hard for me to manage without your help, you know. They are your kids as much as mine, and they deserve better," she continued. "You need to understand this." Jack replied, "Just cut back on some things like champagne and fancy food, and you'll have enough to take care of yourself. If it's too hard, just divorce me. I'm sure the court will make me pay something, even with my small salary." Caroline was taken aback. She didn't get why he was being so harsh, especially after he had been nice at the dinner table. "Jack, are you serious? My kids are always hungry when I take them out. Do you only spend money on your girlfriend? Isn't it better for them to stay with me? I spend everything I have on them, just giving them soup and bread when there isn't enough." "They like that. They never go hungry. I always feed them." He looked at her closely, but she looked away. He asked her, "Can you really say they are your top priority?" "I don't think so." "Nice try, Jack. You're just trying to make me feel bad. But you left your job and the family home." "Why should I be the one to take the blame?" she replied. He shrugged and said, "Because you made this mess." This arguing was pointless. It just pushed Jack away, and Caroline felt frustrated for using this approach. She believed that stepping back from her job showed weakness on Jack's part, and it was unfair to the kids. They used to share the bills, with Jack paying for the mortgage and utilities. Those bills were more than what Caroline brought home in her paycheck. This made her feel resentful, even though she reminded herself she still had a home, children, a job, and someone she cared about. The only thing missing was her husband, and she wanted him back. She had to stay calm and give him time to move past the anger that made him leave. He was hurting the children, and he would see the mistake he made. The idea of going back to school was silly for a man with a family. She thought he should be strong and work through their problems. She planned to tell him she expected more. She felt overwhelmed. It was getting harder to pay her credit card bills each month. She started cutting back on things, even treats for the kids. Finding after-school care had become another cost. She could no longer take long lunches because she had to leave on time to pick up the kids. The children weren't making things easier. They misbehaved and wanted attention when she just wanted some peace. At first, Damien didn't mind the changes to their meetings. He told Caroline that he was happy Jack was gone because he wouldn't have to share her. "I'll get Jack back," she said. "This won't change our relationship, and I want things to be like they were." Jack couldn't come to the house because of the kids, and after trying to meet at lunch once, they stopped that plan. Now they could only see each other on the weekends when Jack was home with the kids. But Damien played rugby on Saturday afternoons, and if there were away games, he would hang out with his friends on Sunday to watch football and play cards. The weekends were when Caroline really needed to focus on Jack. It upset her that he seemed pleased whenever she left the house. She planned to spend her first weekend with Damien from Saturday night to Sunday afternoon. They would go out for dinner and spend the night together. Then she would come back to cook lunch for her family, and Damien would go out with his friends. Jack said this didn't work for him. "I haven't seen my kids all week, and I want to be with them. I'm taking the kids to Whipsnade Zoo on Sunday. If you want to come along, that's fine. We'll leave at 9 and be home late in the evening. Go have fun with your partner. Don't worry about dinner, we'll eat out." Caroline was shocked and didn't know what to say at first. This was a big choice. She couldn't say no to spending time with Damien since she had promised him, but at the same time, she didn't like the idea of Jack taking the kids out without her. "You should have told me sooner," she finally said. "I would love to join, but I can't change my plans." "That's okay." He went outside to play cricket with their son. Caroline felt outsmarted. She made coffee while she thought about everything. When the coffee was ready, she went to the back door and watched Jack throw the ball to Ben. "I made coffee!" she called out. "Thanks," Jack replied. But he kept playing, and she drank her coffee alone as it grew cold. She decided that if he kept acting this way, she would stick to her own plans and not worry about Jack until he was more open. He needed time to adjust to everything changing. She emailed Jack with her plans for the weekend, so he had advance notice and couldn't say it was inconvenient. She needed to talk things over with Damien carefully. He said he couldn't do Sunday lunch, but would be with her from midnight Saturday to 5 p.m. Sunday. She wrote to Jack, "The kids loved their trip to Whipsnade. It was a great idea, and I wish I could have gone. But this weekend is good for us. The kids have already said a few times they want to go to Fantasy World, which is 30 miles away. So we're leaving early Saturday and spending the whole day there. It'll be nice to have the whole family together again." Jack didn't reply right away, and when he did the next day, his answer was short. "Great idea, but I'm not going. I have some shopping to do on Saturday and a lecture to prepare for in the afternoon." She called him right away. "Really, Jack, don't make this harder. The kids will be so let down." "Not if you take them," he said. She didn't want to admit that her plan depended on Jack coming. All week, the kids had been talking about how they wished the weekend would come soon, that they wanted to be at the coast, that her cooking was bad, and what they would do with Jack when he got home. She knew Jack wouldn't change his mind about the weekend. He probably wanted to avoid her as much as he could. She thought it would be hard to win Jack over unless she changed her relationship with Damien. She needed to spend the whole weekend with Jack to work things out. She replied to his email, "Okay, not this weekend then. Everyone is upset. One day of fun will fix things for this weekend." She would have a whole nice day with Damien in the middle of the week. They would pick up the kids from school and then from their clubs. In return, she stayed home with Jack all weekend. This was a small break in a tough life. Jack and Damien needed to see how much she wanted their company, but there was more to the story. Jack's work was going well. He felt excited and energized after the changes in his life. He looked forward to going to the library. There, he could forget about Caroline for a while. His job at the bank felt like a bad memory now. When he did think of Caroline, he saw things more clearly. She made mistakes, just like anyone else. She had to face the results of those mistakes. It wasn't his fault, and he felt no guilt. More than ever, he was eager to spend time with his kids. He saw how important they were to him. His part-time job was secured after many talks with his professor. He strongly shared his ideas about how government help affected shipping before World War I. One day after a meeting, the professor surprised him by offering him a few hours of teaching and tutoring for college students in a basic history class. "I like the way you share your ideas," Professor Pickering said. "You say what you think and you choose your points well. Maybe your time in business helped you talk so clearly. The students will enjoy this. Teach them a lot about economics and show them how it works in real life. You need to learn more history, but you'll be able to fill in those gaps." This small income helped Jack a lot. Teaching also allowed him to join a list for university housing. When he mentioned he was a single dad needing help with his kids, they quickly gave him a tiny apartment on campus. This place was filled with teachers like him, all trying to balance their work and family life. There were friendly people around, and he could talk to smart people and meet plenty of women. The only reason he went home was to be with his children, and he began planning how to move them into his new home. But Caroline was very against it. "You can't take the kids away from me. They should be here where they can have fun and play with friends. I'll ask them what they want. You're trying to turn them against me. I'm not trying to do anything but live my life. I hope you can do the same," he replied. Caroline feels pulled in two directions. She has a wish, and it's tied to Damien. She really wants him to look after the children. He agrees to take care of them during the weekly meeting. This is the first time he meets many of his new fellow teachers. There are many teachers at the meeting, mostly women who teach literature and sip herbal tea. A few serious men teach philosophy, and there's a mix of historians and classicists. Among the historians, Jacques is the only one studying economics besides his professor. At first, he doesn't say much and just watches his co-workers chat. He's surprised by how they attack each other's ideas and strongly defend what they care about. This isn't how he usually sees work done. He wonders how they come together to plan the courses. The literature professor leading the meeting seems to ignore most people who want to speak. She hasn't introduced Jacques yet, but he notices one or two people looking at him with a mix of curiosity and what seems like dislike. He tells himself not to let that bother him. 10 minutes into the meeting, Professor Pickering finally introduces Jacques. She explains that the history classes for new students are missing an economic view. She suggests that because Jacques is here, they should add some economics to lessons about 19th century imperialism and the rise of fascism. Clearly, this idea has been talked about before, and it brings up strong feelings. "That's not even on the agenda," scoffs a female teacher who studies post-structuralism. "Will you ever stop trying to change everyone's mind?" asks a male philosopher. "We agreed long ago that these classes are already too full," says the department chair, Professor Pickering. A slender young woman with purple hair speaks up. "You keep hiring men even though the university wants to have equal numbers of men and women on staff." She seems serious and smart. 70% of the teachers are women. The professor replies, "I do my part for equal gender representation, but the overall number is still only 40% women and 20% of our faculty. A position like this shouldn't be filled by a professor in this department. We need to focus more on women's experiences," says an older male classics teacher. "Our students have been asking for more economics," Professor Pickering says calmly, "and economic topics are very relevant to women's experiences. Isn't that right, Jacques? We could cover economics for free and also look at how the Great Depression affected domestic workers," Jacques adds nervously, feeling the attention of the room on him. He locks eyes with the woman across the room, and she seems amused and ready to criticize him if he tries to downplay the importance of foreign and defense issues. "I'm all for it," she says, "even if it might hurt the fairness and diversity rules at this school that isn't very inclusive." "Thank you, Hazel, for your support," says Professor Pickering. The chairman asks, "So, Dr. Kirk, do the men agree?" with a hint of sarcasm. "We need to vote," someone calls out. "There's nothing to vote on," replies the chairman. "I don't hear any other ideas, so we are all in agreement. Just what we need. A white male banker to save the faculty from money troubles." A woman next to Jack stands up and walks away dramatically. Soon after, the meeting ends, and Jack finds out from his professor that he will have 10 extra hours of teaching each week after half a semester, plus time to grade papers. He can't believe it. Things are starting to look up. He begins to feel more relaxed when he starts running again. The university is set in a beautiful park that slopes down to the river, surrounded by woods and fields. During lunch, when the sun is high, he goes outside and runs on a short path he has chosen, which has soft ground. He enjoys it so much that he decides to run a second lap, making sure he has enough time to shower and change for the afternoon class. He hasn't felt this good in a long time. The next day, he runs under cloudy skies and focuses on going faster. He wants to catch up on his fitness after ignoring it for a while, thinking that setting physical goals will help him feel better mentally. He crosses the river, feeling strong, with only a little soreness from yesterday, and starts running up the hill through the woods. When he sees a runner ahead of him, a slim woman dressed in tight clothes and a tank top, He realizes she might be feeling uneasy with him behind her in the quiet fields. He isn't sure what to do. He speeds up and notices the woman is also running faster. She doesn't want him to go past, but he decides to keep going. As he gets closer, he allows her enough space, and as he runs by, he says, "Hey, great place to run." She turns her head, her face focused, and he sees that it's Dr. Hazel Kirk from the literature department. She is the same woman who sat across from him at the meeting. He smiles, moves out of her way, and runs at a good pace all the way home. After a while, he sees her coming up the steps of the Humanities building. "Showing off, are we?" she says. He isn't sure if she is joking, so he tries to keep the mood light. Gotta burn energy since there is so much thinking to do. "Well, don't feel you have to impress me." "I shouldn't. I've been trying to stay out of your way." "Well, you haven't succeeded." "No, you didn't get ahead of me." They smile at each other fiercely and then go their separate ways. She looks nice with her hair pulled back and some color running down her cheeks. The next day, he spots her by herself in a coffee shop looking through a pile of papers. He grabs his coffee and sits down in front of her. "Do you mind if I sit here?" he asks. She shrugs and replies, "Why should I mind? I'm busy and alone. I don't know anyone here. We work in different areas, but can we be friends?" She looks at him closely, and they lock eyes. Finally, she says, "You don't need to ask. I'm happy to chat with anyone. Why do you look angry?" He is surprised. He studies her face. Could she really see inside him? "Do you not like me? Why?" She answers his question with another question. "I haven't met you, but I want to know why." "I guess you seem flawed and lonely, which is interesting," he says. "I'll buy you a drink one night and you can tell me about yourself. Then I'll decide if we can be friends. But for now, I have work to do. Thanks for backing me at the faculty meeting." "I didn't back you. I would have voted for more feminist studies. But we don't have enough staff to teach it." "You're lucky, especially for a banker." "Thanks, but I'm not a banker anymore." They meet the next night at one of the campus bars. Jack is surprised to be back among the loud students, feeling amused as he remembers his college days. Hazel insists on buying drinks. He orders a pint of local ale and notices she's just drinking water. "A pint of tap water, unless it's gin?" he offers with a hopeful smile. She laughs and says, "I rely on my wits, treat them well, and don't waste money. There's not much of it around here. I'll buy the next one. I'll only have this one." "Fair enough. Don't have too much." "Tomorrow then. Beer makes me feel better," he says. They chat about work and colleagues, but Hazel makes it clear she doesn't spread rumors. She asks why he thinks beer helps him. He explains it makes him less shy and more open to sharing. She tells him he needs to find the courage to be himself without drinks. "Maybe you're the one afraid of losing control," he replies, nudging her half-full glass of water. "A little gin could work wonders." "So are we friends now?" she asks. She nods slowly. "You're not so scary now that I know you better. We could run together, but I'll outrun you." "I'll keep up with you. You'd be better off running with me." They agree to run during their lunch breaks. They jog together a couple of times a week. He runs one lap with Hazel for fun and then another lap for speed. He has fewer classes than she does, even though she keeps asking him questions. They both hold back from talking about their private lives. Then Ben and Amy come to visit for half a semester. One day, he walks across campus holding a baby in his arms. They meet Hazel as she comes out of a bookstore. "Who are those?" she asks, pointing at the kids. "I'd like you to meet my children. This is Ben and Amy. Hazel is my friend from the Humanities department. She's a feminist." "What's a feminist?" both kids ask at the same time. "A feminist is someone who believes that women and girls should have the same chance in life as men and boys," Hazel explains. Jack chimes in, saying something about how bankers control the world in a bad way, but he gives that gloomy look. The kids don't pay much attention to that. They are more curious as Hazel asks them about themselves. It's reading week, so they have some free time. Jack tells Hazel he won't be running today and invites her to a picnic by the river. She hesitates but agrees when he insists, especially since the kids want her to come. Jack has planned this nicely. The kids carry drinks and snacks. He brings vegetarian sushi, some white wine, and fruit salad. He even remembers to bring a mat to sit on. He knows most women don't want to sit on wet grass, even if it hasn't rained in ages. The kids are excited by the river. He has to stay calm as they run along the bank, tossing sticks and watching them float away. Hazel shows up with homemade pizza and a flask of soup. He is impressed by how well she talks to the kids, who are usually shy. She chats with them easily and even gets them to try the soup. Jack notices how she asks smart questions, trying to find out more about their lives and their mom. Shy Amy cuddles close to Jack and says she misses her dad because he doesn't live at home anymore. Ben mentions that his mom is always late picking him up from football practice, and he thinks that's not fair. Hazel agrees to have a glass of wine with Jack, and he starts to feel he's made a good choice. After they eat, Hazel takes the kids for a short walk. She shows them where rabbits go, showing them the long grass that has been flattened and spots in the bushes where they can sneak in. They look at scratch marks and small burrows by the river. Ben sits next to Hazel and asks, "Daddy said you're a teacher. What do you teach?" "I teach literature. It means studying books and what people write," she says with a smile. "What kind of books?" Ben asks. "All kinds of books." "What's your favorite?" he wonders. "One of my favorites is about defending women's rights by Mary Wollstonecraft," she replies. "Will I like it?" he asks. "They said you should read it when you are older, but maybe wait a bit," Hazel says. "I will see if she wrote anything about men and I'll read it later." When she and Jack are alone, she asks, "So, you're married and didn't tell me? That was a bit forgetful." "Married for now," he replies. "I didn't think that was important for the kind of talk you wanted to have. As you know, we live in different places. What about you?" She looked at him closely and shook her head. "Why do you ask?" "Because all women around a certain age should have a partner." He laughed. "I didn't mean that at all, as you know, although you are really good with kids. I have a younger brother, sisters, nephews, and nieces, and I've learned how to ask good questions. Yes, kids like it when you care about their lives." "That's great. But talking to you to get information feels hard, like trying to get a diamond from a rock. What do you think you should know but don't?" He thought about it carefully. "Do you want a deeper bond with me but feel free to seek it?" She also thought for a moment before replying, "I don't believe in relationships where one person depends on the other. I've always moved around for my studies and work, from one coast of the US to Spain. No relationship can survive being far apart, and I don't see why I should put my job at risk for a relationship. It's tough to be independent when you have kids," he said. "Many single moms find a way to do it. In any case, kids rely on their parents and need support. It's easier when two adults are around, and to do that, they both need to commit to each other." "Why do you say that? It sounds like you and your wife are both meeting the children's needs, even though you're not truly together, and the kids might be missing out. But it seems like you're doing fine." "I don't want more commitment. Commitment is tricky because it makes you less independent, and others can disappoint you." He looked away from her searching eyes. He didn't like this talk. He didn't want to explain to Hazel why he stopped being committed to Caroline. His failed marriage felt like a shame to him, not something to talk about. And he felt annoyed with himself because deep down, he wanted some sympathy for his troubles and hoped she would show him that he mattered. It felt silly. Plus, he was confused about what he wanted from Hazel. She wasn't easy to figure out. Still, he looked forward to spending time with her. Was it because he was lonely, or did he need a relationship to make him feel better about himself? Sometimes he thought maybe he was looking for someone to help him with his kids. His mind warned him that he shouldn't get close to another woman right now. Both he and Hazel were busy, but they cooked for each other once a week and sometimes ran together at lunch. They usually talked about work, teaching, and research. She asked about his kids, but he seldom got her to share about herself. He knew she grew up in Bristol, that her parents lived in Bath, and that she studied at Cambridge University. After that, she did her PhD on William Godwin, Mary Wollstonecraft, and Mary Shelley at Brighton University. Her boss was a bearded man who used to be a sorcerer and was now the head of the school. The world of schools is strange. He didn't know anything about her life before he got there. From talking to other teachers, he learned that she was always focused on her goals, worked hard, and liked doing the tasks that others did not want to do. She held several important roles like admissions officer and course director. This was her first full-time teaching job. He realized that a strong, career-driven woman like Caroline was probably not someone he should be depending on. It was easy to think that way, but harder to actually do. In the next chapter, Caroline was decided to work on her relationship with Jacques. She knew she wasn't perfect. She told herself that she needed to find balance in her two lives. Jacques had lost his way a bit, and she wanted to help him. She kept things friendly but dressed nicely when he came home on weekends, smiled at Leah, and tried to touch him gently, but no kisses or hugs that could make him pull away. "It's great to be together again," she said. "We know each other so well. We have a lot to discuss, and I'm worried that we are losing touch. We both need to do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. I will make sure we spend time together as much as we want. I have tried to protect what we have. Damien won't take up any time with you this weekend. Not this weekend. I'm honest about it. Damien knows we hang out when you are busy and he won't care. Our life can be the same as before. Are you planning to see someone else?" "I'm not seeing anyone else. I love Damien. I'm not lying to you. But this is not just about us. You weren't honest with me for those months. You didn't tell me when you were having fun with Damien to see if it was serious. I went to work believing I had a loving wife who stayed up late working." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You have a clever way with words. You always make me seem wrong, but Damien and I truly care about each other, and you can't turn that into something bad. I wish I could show you what a good person he is. You wouldn't feel jealous if you could see why I love him." Tears began to fall. This was new for her, but also not surprising. Wiping her tears with a tissue, she said, "I didn't want to focus on Damien and me. I know it's hard for you. I wanted to talk about us. I love you, and you know that. I care a lot about you. Punishing me isn't going to help. Maybe what happened feels unfair to you. This isn't what you expected when you married me, but it's surprising for me too. I need your help. Damien is important to me, and I can't pretend we've never met. He's part of my life, and we have to figure out how to handle this together." "And what are you saying? That you want to be my wife 4 days a week and be with Damien the other 3, or the other way around? You've been with me for a long time, so Damien has a lot to catch up on. I'll give him one more day." She shook her head, tears in her eyes, while he went to make coffee. When he came back, he noticed Caroline wanted to try something new. She sat down next to him on the couch. "Things aren't right, honey. We need to understand each other better. Stay with me for a while. We need a better plan. You're working on it. You and your special friend. I know you'll think of another plan." "Like the time you said I was out of place," he replied. "No, Jacques, that's not true. Our marriage is worth fighting for, but you act like you don't care. That makes me very sad. If you think about it, you could have done more to keep me from falling for someone else. We need to spend more time together." "You mean if I hadn't gone mountain climbing when you told me not to? I had to work, and you were upset when I didn't do what you wanted? If none of that had happened, maybe you wouldn't need someone else." He paused. "Fine, I understand." She blushed. "I swear it wasn't planned. I wasn't looking for someone." 3 months ago, they had a big fight. He had kept asking her where she wanted to go for vacation, but she wouldn't agree to anything. Now he knew it was because of Damien, but then he thought it was because she didn't like his ideas. Finally, he gave up and planned a trip by himself. She was really angry about taking care of the kids, but he went anyway. He spent time walking and climbing in northern Greece. She sat quietly for a moment, then looked at him again and said, "I know this hurts you. It's my foolish pride. I can't say no to Damien because I love him, and it's how I express my feelings. It's like enjoying a nice dinner with someone special. You dress up to make it special, to enjoy the moment. A business dinner can feel nice, just like a dinner with someone you love. I love Damien. I want to be perfect for him because I love him so much." Now she looked at him with hope, wanting him to understand. "Please listen. I love you too. I love you just as much as I always have. I can love more than most people. Damien won't change our lives. I am your wife. I share your life, and I love you deeply. I know you better than anyone, and we need each other. Damien will never get in the way of that. I'll handle it. Now I want you to go to bed. I don't like when you sleep away from me. You can't get comfortable on the couch, and it makes me feel bad." "You're probably right. I don't love well in any way. I realize that now. I have a hard time showing love, and I make you feel bad. It's strange, but I can't seem to sleep next to a wife who thinks of someone else. Please listen. This matters to me. I want to be close to you. I want to show you I care. Why do you think I want to be with you? Do you really not know me? Do you think I want to be with someone who just had fun with another man?" If I liked that kind of thing, I could find someone else. She gasped. That was a horrible thing to say. Absolutely horrible. But I do appreciate your honesty. Now, please be honest with me, too. Do I need to say I'm sorry again? I meant to act honestly. Being intimate shouldn't cause any problems. Don't worry, it won't be a problem. It won't happen between us. Not ever. Their eyes met, and he felt happy that he had finally reached her. Nonsense, she said as she put down her wine glass and stood up. Why do you have to ruin everything? I have worked so hard for this. You are right. I am a jerk. But don't worry about me. I have made a lot of friends at school, special ones. I won't be alone. He said this to thank Damien, but at that moment he realized it was true. Hazel was special to him. Just thinking about her made him feel better. This isn't what I wanted. You'll get over it. I've already moved on. I hardly think about Damien anymore. She ran out of the room and he chased after her. He ran like he had never run before. Empty, lifeless, inspired. Another weekend came, and she approached him, upset and angry. My dad called and said something. They called while you were here. Did you talk to them? He nodded. Did you tell George they couldn't come tomorrow? We cannot let my parents make things worse for us, especially now that we get along so much better than before. Of course I said they could come. I like your parents. They are fun, and I don't want to disappoint them. You already said they could stay. I see no reason to say no. She was furious. Don't be foolish. That was before you went to Brighton. You know they can't come. Do you plan to keep pretending to sleep on the couch? What will they think? He shrugged. Are you scared of the truth? They are adults. Let them make their own decisions. Or you can explain to them why you are not sleeping in the same bed. Let's see if your mom thinks you and I are just friends. I'm sure they will understand. Or are you afraid George will think his daughter is doing something wrong? She fumed. That's a very selfish way to think. You are trying to punish me for not doing what needs to be done. I'll tell them not to come. But why should they be punished? You're right, it's not fair. Maybe you should tell Damien that this was all a mistake, that Mom and Dad won't approve, and for many other reasons. It would be nice if you would share my bed, she added. Doesn't Damien give you enough? Don't be rude. I'm thinking about you. It's not good to be away from you. How do you know what I want? She looked at him closely. I figured that since you choose not to be with me, you want nothing. If you are sleeping next to me, that's different. Maybe you should just tell me, he said with a smile. Are you worried I might give you a disease? Don't worry, I'll tell you about my mistakes in 3 months, just like you did to me, she replied. I don't sleep around, she added quietly. I'm only with Damien, and we care about each other. You have nothing to worry about with me. That's strange. It's hard to know if I should trust you or Damien. Are you sure he doesn't have other women he's with? Like a guy who always goes after married women. She slammed the door and went to her room, feeling upset. Jack thought he had won the argument, but the next morning she came into the living room looking worried. I'm sorry about last night. I just don't want to upset my parents. They are very old-fashioned and wouldn't understand why I was on the couch and you weren't here. They will understand. You're not really worried about them. You're worried about what they think of you. If they get upset, it's because you've done something that will upset them. Just tell them the truth. Tell them you made a mistake and that you have someone else. They will handle the truth better than lies. She looked confused. But we didn't break up. Why do you keep saying that? I told them you work outside during the week. We don't live together like a couple, so it feels like we're apart. Things are fine between us. Don't say anything bad to my parents. I already made plans with Damien, so it's not a good time for a visit. They will have to cancel. That's not a problem. I told Stella I'd look after them if you couldn't. They are excited to come visit. You jerk! She felt tears form in her eyes. You're trying to ruin my day. I'm meeting Damien tomorrow. You probably know it's his birthday, and we've planned a special evening at the theater and dinner for a long time. That's why I didn't want my parents here this weekend. Please don't make my life harder. Mind your own business and stop making everyone upset. He shrugged, not liking how she spoke to him. I like your parents. They are nice people, and the kids are looking forward to meeting them. I'll tell them and meet them for lunch. That makes it my business, too. After that, they can go shopping. Bring Damien along if you want. Then when you're done having fun, you can introduce him to your parents. If he cares for you, he'll want to meet them. She looked not just tired, but also angry, and didn't reply. He slept well on the small couch that night. Caroline used the time while the kids stayed with Jack to work on her relationship with Damien. After work, she would go to his house and spend the night. They would cook and eat together while listening to music. It was nice, but Caroline soon realized that Damien only wanted to do this a couple of nights each week. It wasn't because he was busy, he just enjoyed being alone and got bored if she was there too often. That's why he was still single. She thought maybe he just didn't want to get married. That was okay, she told herself. This is what I wanted. I don't want to marry Damien, which means I can still see Jack when things get better. Jack will appreciate that I spend less time with my boyfriend. But for now, she had to face lonely evenings and nights at home, which felt sad. No matter how hard she tried to stay late at work, she would go home to a cold house with no one to cook for and an empty bed. This made the time spent with Damien even more special. When Sunday came and she had not talked to anyone all day, she rushed around the house, cleaning the kitchen, watching TV, and thinking about dinner. She felt excited when it was time for her family to arrive. Jack promised to be home for dinner, but they showed up at 7 o'clock, tired and hungry. She hugged her kids, smiled at Jack, and gave his arm a gentle touch. "It's great to see you, Jack. I hope the kids were good and you enjoyed your time." He nodded and stepped back. "And you did too. I know it can be tough to handle the kids alone, so you should be glad to have a break. Dinner is ready. I love it when you all come home. I always want you here. It's such a joy to cook for you, Jack. You really appreciate my food." He sat with them and ate a little, but she could tell he didn't really like it. She made stew because it was cheaper than buying meat. The kids liked it, but it was different from the usual Sunday roast. She thought about getting some wine, but decided it was better for Jack to see how little money she had. If he wanted wine, he could bring some. Most of the conversation was with the kids. They told her about their picnic with Jack's friend Hazel, and how Hazel could make a great pizza with tomatoes, olives, and herbs, but no cheese because she was a vegetarian. Caroline felt strange hearing this. It was like she was back in the role of a wife and mother without anyone saying a word. "I can make pizza too. I'm just too busy, and mine will have cheese. Don't pretend you don't like cheese. Hazel's pizza is good, but she doesn't eat cheese because male calves are killed at birth. I think that's awful, but I'll eat cheese because I enjoy it. One day I'll stop the killing of calves. It's silly to get upset over food." "You should eat what's in front of you," Caroline said. "I don't think Hazel knows much about raising kids, but she's fun." "Daddy likes her, and I like her too," Ben said. "But she's not very good at football. She's my friend because she makes Daddy happy. Amy said he takes her for runs, and she makes him laugh. Plus, she helps me with my art project for school," Caroline said. "I'd help if you just asked. I can always make Jack laugh, but it makes him mad that I can't make him smile like she does." Next chapter. Time goes by fast when they're together. Jack can't say no to Hazel when she calls and asks for lunch. She seems to like him. She calls a lot, and she lets him hold her hand and kiss her when they meet. But once, when he put his arm around her waist and pulled her close, she pushed him away. "You're trying to squeeze me too hard," she said. He disagreed, but she was sure about it. She can be hard to understand, and he worries he can't win her heart. He thinks she doesn't know how she feels about him and wonders if she has never been in love. He buys her flowers, but she says, "I don't accept gifts. It's fine to share. You buy me coffee, and I'll buy you coffee. But gifts I'll return unopened. If you take them, you always owe something more. So you think I'd buy you a bunch of flowers and expect something back? Exactly. But these are roses, and I don't expect anything for them. You have odd ideas about men, but really I want to say thank you for being wonderful with my kids. You've given them a lot. You showed them that their dad isn't alone and sad. That matters a lot to them. I liked meeting them. That's enough for me. I don't need gifts or feel like I owe you anything. What if I don't ask for something back? What if I just kiss you like cavemen do?" he says, and quickly kisses her on the lips. "Now you have to kiss me back to be even." He feels glad when she laughs and does what he asks. He finds an empty juice bottle and sticks his roses in it on her desk. She smiles. Soon they have to go to work. He goes to the library and she has a lecture. The kids are coming over for the weekend. He knows Hazel loves being with children, so she takes them to Wittering, where there are sandy beaches. He drives to her small house behind University Park. Feeling silly when Hazel opens the door, he says to his kids, "Say hi to Daddy's workout coach." "She takes me jogging and keeps me away from burgers," Ben says. "Hi, Hazel." Hazel doesn't say anything, and Amy looks shocked. "We're here to collect our kisses for my roses," Jack adds with a smile. But then he notices that Hazel looks very pale and is shaking. He hurried over and took her hand. "What's wrong? Are you feeling okay?" She shook her head, unable to speak. She felt cold, and when he put his arm around her, she almost fell down. "Hazel? What happened?" She was breathing heavily, her face wet with tears. "My mom called," she cried, taking big breaths between her words. "My dad died. He had a stroke." He hugged her tightly and kissed her forehead. "I'm so sorry." He turned to his kids and asked them to come into the house. He led Hazel into the hallway, and her arms wrapped around him. She held him close, and he could feel her soft sobs coming from deep inside. His kids stood at the end of the hallway, watching with wide eyes. He needed to do something, so he lifted Hazel off the ground and carried her to the living room. "Let's make Hazel comfortable." He set her down on the couch, and she was still holding on to him. He needed her to talk. "When did your mom call?" "I don't know. Maybe a few minutes ago. I want you to relax for a while, and then we'll figure things out. I'm going to make some tea. Stay with me. Ben and Amy will sit with you." He went into the kitchen, put the kettle on, and found green tea in a pot and a cute tulip-shaped cup. Looking into the living room, he saw his kids sitting by her on the couch. Ben was telling her something about school, and she hugged them both. He paused while making the tea and said to her, "You'll need to go to your mom's." She nodded. "But I have class tomorrow. I have to work. I'll call your school and they will help you. You can't drive like this. You're still shaking. I'll drive you to your mom's. Then I'll take the kids to their moms. Sorry, kids." "No, I can't ask you to do all that," Hazel said, starting to cry. "It's not that important. And you didn't ask me to. I'm just trying to help. Now I'm going to call the office and let them know you won't be in tomorrow. They'll understand. Thanks." He called, and when he came back, Hazel had finished her tea and seemed a bit better. She tried to smile at the kids. "I'm sorry about the tea," she said to Jack. "I'll be okay now." "You have to listen to what my dad says," Ben told her. "He always knows what to do." "I will," Hazel said as she had a little more tea while Jack gathered her things. It was a long drive. When they got there, they found Hazel's mother, a short woman with gray hair. She said hello to Jack kindly but didn't seem to remember his name. Her sisters looked at Hazel and then stared at Jack and his kids with curiosity. "So this is your boyfriend?" asked the youngest one, Mimi. She kissed Jack on the cheek. "Mine. He's tall and dark and handsome." Then she turned to Jack and said, "I thought we'd never get to meet. Hazel usually keeps her boyfriends out of sight, hiding them in the closet or under the bed. Hazel doesn't argue with this, and soon everyone is looking at the kids. They stay quiet at first, but then people start to talk to them, give them drinks, and lead them into the living room. There, they sit down to watch a movie. "I don't know where you will all sleep," their mom says as she walks in and looks at the sleepy kids. "Jack can sleep with Hazel, and the kids can go into Daddy's office," says Clementine, the big sister. "I can sleep on the floor if I have to," Jack says, glancing at Hazel. She doesn't reply and goes with her mom into the kitchen to help make dinner. Jack stays with his little sister and asks Mimi about Hazel's home life. Mimi tells him that Hazel is really smart. Since she started school, she has won lots of awards, even a scholarship to Cambridge, and no one can explain what she studies. Mimi also wants to know all about Jack and notices that the men Hazel dates seem to disappear before she sees her sister again. "How often do you see her?" Jack asks with a smile. "At least once a year," she says, sounding a bit cheeky. "I haven't noticed, but she's hard to recognize." Hazel doesn't buy sweets for them because they're bad for kids, or chocolate because it comes from unfair work, Ben adds. "But she's very nice. She told me she never had dolls when she was young," he says. Amy calls her a liar. "She had dolls, but she got rid of them," Mimi says. "I still have one of her dolls. I bought it because she said she was going to bury it in the garden as a protest. I can show you." Jack then walks into the kitchen where Hazel's mom offers him coffee and cookies. Hazel is peeling potatoes, and both of them are crying. He asks if he can help, but she tells him to leave. He goes back to the living room and sits with Clementine, who is talking about Hazel. She asks him about her job, and Jack explains how Hazel is a strong feminist. He talks about her bold speeches and how she critiques books. At dinner, he has to share about himself and his family, and the kids join in too. There's a quiet sadness at the end of the table where their father would sit. They seem ready to laugh at anything. Jack doesn't say anything about Damien, and the kids don't ask why he left their mom. He talks about his old job and how happy he is to have quit. Later, he speaks with Hazel and tells her that he won't take any chances to sneak into her bed. "Don't be silly," she says. "We're both adults. We both need a good sleep." Now, he helps bathe the kids and get them ready for bed. Mimi picks up some storybooks from her childhood to read to them. She looks a lot like Hazel, but softer and kinder. Jack can't help but think Hazel is cute. He wants a partner who is steady and gives and takes equally without complaining. It might be hard to notice at first, but if something matters to her, she will definitely share it. Before going to bed, everyone enjoys a drink. Hazel sticks with tonic water. Everyone is lost in their own thoughts, feeling their sadness. Jack takes a sip of his scotch. He wishes he could have met Hazel's dad. He tries to ease the mood with a joke about Dutch courage as he drinks. When it's time to sleep, everyone laughs, and Hazel playfully slaps him. He says goodnight, takes her hand, and leads her up the stairs. He climbs into bed first. Hazel searches for something, changes her clothes in the bathroom, and comes back wearing a t-shirt that says, "Faculty Whore." It's a funny twist. He asks her how she knows. She turns off the light and cuddles with him. The next morning, the kids rush in, eager for breakfast. Alone with Hazel, Jack says he needs to divorce Caroline to fix things. Hazel warns him, saying she's not really into marriage. He replies that maybe not, but he wants her to be with him because he's a one-woman man. They both realize it's time to get the kids home. A few days later, Jack goes out for coffee after a tough seminar about labor issues before World War I. He remembers arguing about labor unions, socialism, and communism when he was a student. Now he feels sad because young people don't seem interested. He thinks about how to make the topic better. The weather is nice, so he takes his coffee outside and sits by the fountain in the middle of the plaza. He tries to relax and prepare for the rest of his library work. A student from the seminar approaches and asks about the reading list. He chats with her and sees that she might be trying to flirt. Focusing on finding another book for her, he keeps talking until she finally walks away. He closes his eyes, hoping to clear his mind. When he opens them, he notices a man walking toward him. The man seems familiar, but Jack isn't sure why. He looks up to see him standing right in front, blocking his view. "Hey, I want to talk to you," the man says. Jack stays silent. The man, dressed in a gray suit with curly hair, looks directly at him with an accusing stare. This isn't a teacher. This is a face from his nightmares. It's Damien. Jack sits still, feeling tense but also curious about what will happen next. He has tried hard to avoid this moment, but part of him isn't unhappy it's happening. He looks at Damien, aware that despite the man's larger size, he won't back down. This is his ground, and he won't give in. Damien's voice shakes with tension. Jack can hear the anger in it. He knows he is ready for this fight. "I guess this is your sad way of getting back at me. You messed up my life and even said you sent that letter. It's clear, but you have to face it. You need to sign this paper. What you did was wrong, but if you admit it, I won't push any further." Damien shoves Jack closer, holding out the paper, eyes wide, lips tight, drooling a bit. "Just go home." Jack doesn't know where that harsh voice is coming from. He feels a rush of energy. He stands up so they are eye to eye, staring into Damien's bloodshot eyes. It's hard to believe that this plain man has brought down everything Jack has worked for. He is fighting not only for himself, but for his new life and his kids. "I don't need to do anything. You are the one who ruined it all. Now leave." "I spoke to the police about the break-in at my home. I gave them your name. They'll catch you soon. You better sign that paper. Get back into your hole and stay there. If you hang around here and make trouble, I'll make sure you regret it. No one will care about you. You're a loser. Just sign it." Jack sipped his coffee, splattering some on Damien's shirt and shiny shoes. He knows he might lose if Damien fights, but he doesn't care. Damien is sweating. This isn't the cool counselor anymore. It's not the moment for who hits first. People are around, but no one seems to notice. Jack grabs Damien's collar and pulls him closer. "Leave before I throw you out." Damien spins around and swings a punch. It barely misses Jack's face as he steps aside. Jack nudges Damien, making him trip over the curb and splash into the water. A crowd watches. They don't seem surprised and clap slowly like they've seen it all before. Damien runs toward the fountain, but Jack moves out of the way. It's hard, but he keeps walking, not looking back. The paper he was told to sign gets caught by the wind and dances away across the square. He keeps walking, expecting to be chased, but he ends up at the library and goes through the gate with his security card. A chill goes through him, and he sits on the nearest bench, picking up a newspaper. He feels good. He feels like shouting and swinging his arms. This feeling stays until evening when he goes to meet Hazel at the bar after her late class. When he arrives, she's already there with a few students and gives him a tired look, clearly annoyed. He politely asks if anyone wants a drink and heads to the bar for himself. When he comes back, the students have left, and he leans in to kiss Hazel. She doesn't waste time and doesn't hide how she feels. "Are you trying to embarrass me? I trusted you, and now I find out you're just a troublemaker. How could you do this?" Jack sits up, shocked. "Wait a minute, Hazel. Is this about my meeting with Caroline's boyfriend? What do you think happened? This is just between him and me. He attacked me and I defended myself. I showed a lot of self-control during that public fight. This is a university. We are supposed to learn how to solve problems in the world. How does fighting help? I really dislike what you did. There's always another way. I should have let him hit me. You should have just walked away. I left as soon as I could, but you fought in front of everyone in the university square. Now people will think poorly of you. I feel embarrassed to even know you. I can't stand that kind of behavior. I haven't done anything wrong. This goes against everything I believe. How can women be treated fairly if men solve things with their fists? To be equal, we need to follow rules and respect each other. I didn't hit a woman. You said it yourself. No one owns anyone. I own my actions, but you didn't do anything. And if it happened again, I would do the same thing. I am not against fighting for what you believe in. But fighting with your fists isn't always the answer. Most of the time, I think you agree. A man's strength can defend equality too, not just be a threat. You don't really know me. I believe in sticking to my principles. I don't want to be with someone who uses their fists to deal with feelings. Hazel stands up. Don't bother making dinner for me. She walks out, leaving Jack alone with his drink, feeling crushed. His mood does not get better when a couple of drunken rugby players come up to him. "Great job, mate. We saw you toss that guy in the fountain. Awesome." Everyone seems to be watching him. They all saw the fight. He thinks about what to do about Hazel, but he feels so upset about losing her and embarrassed by what she thinks of him. So he leaves his beer, goes back to his apartment, changes clothes, and runs to catch up with her. In the gathering darkness, his past still weighs on him, pulling him down, making him feel small. The next day, Hazel avoids him, and the giggle she gives at the start of the seminar makes him worried. Finally, one of the male students tells him that the fight is on YouTube. Someone recorded it and shared it online. Jack tries to laugh it off. "So you thought I was just a quiet thinker? Now you see I'm a strong guy who throws people who disagree with me into the fountain. That's why I've done well as a banker. We always knew you were a banker, so it's no surprise you're causing trouble in public." One of them laughs softly, then quickly pauses. He decides to forget about the whole thing. The fight is just another result of Caroline's fright, and he won't let it get him down. The next day, in the middle of the afternoon, he gets a call from his professor. The professor asks him to go to a meeting for visitors at Senate House. "You are the only one on my team I can trust to wear a good suit and tie. Dress well and talk about economic history. It's a chance to show off and get a free lunch." He arrives a bit late. The first person he sees in the busy room is Hazel. She has on a fancy silk scarf, which is her way of dressing up. He doesn't recognize anyone else. The guests are important people from a university in India. There's wine, snacks, and a buffet. He fills his plate. Wanting to impress, he uses his business skills to start talking to people. He joins a talk between a thin scientist and one of the guests. He shares a few jokes and some wise words. Then he chats with a lonely man with thin glasses. This man turns out to be the head of engineering. They discover they both like mountain climbing. They enjoy their conversation. Jack goes to refill his wine and talks to a couple of guests who are chatting with a woman in a tweed coat. One of them is an economist, and they talk seriously about banking, the debt problems in Europe, and rules for money in growing economies. It's an interesting discussion where they share ideas. When the visitors leave, Jack finds himself talking to the woman in the tweed coat. He suddenly realizes she is the vice-chancellor of the university. She asks him about his work, his research, and his thoughts on the history classes. He likes the talk and sees Hazel watching him. She is still with her friends, not joining in. He feels a mix of anger and frustration. The vice-chancellor smiles kindly and walks away. Jack feels good about his job and gets himself more food. It's Friday, and he has a seminar to teach at lunchtime. Later, he will drive home to pick up his children from school. He looks forward to seeing them, but he is not ready to spend the weekend with Caroline. He hopes she will be out with her boyfriend most of the time. He and Ben sit in the car waiting for Amy after school. Ben says, "Mom cried and yelled a lot this morning. I think she's really mad at me because I tore my shirt when putting it on. It was the only clean one I had, and now I have to wear yesterday's dirty one." "It's just a little mix-up," he tells Ben. "We'll sort it out when we get home. If we need to, we can buy you some more shirts." Ben adds, "I got sent home from school this week because I couldn't find my tie and went without it. When I told Mom, she said it was my own fault. Not if you tried to find it. We can buy another one. When you find the old one, you'll have a backup." "Thanks, Dad." His daughter makes him feel better, and they head to the mall to buy clothes for Ben. They also grab new pens for Amy, all while putting off meeting his wife. But she's waiting for them, and he notices right away that she has dressed nicely. He lets the kids go ahead of him. Before she can say anything, he says, "You look nice all dressed up." She blushes and steps closer to him, but he pulls back. "Don't come near me. I don't know who you were with." He has never said anything so hurtful to Caroline before. She steps back, looking shocked and confused. "Please, Jack, I know I deserve it, but don't do this. I can't take it anymore." He wonders what's wrong. "Is it about your lover?" She nods and starts to cry. "Damien got a job in London. He was so upset when his boss didn't believe him about that letter. He left and took a job with the company's biggest rival. I don't think we can stay together so far apart." Their relationship was already falling apart. Jack thinks about all this and realizes that Damien's visit was a desperate move because of his work troubles. It's good to think that their fight had brought him down a bit. "Don't be too hard on me, Jack. I cooked a nice dinner. Let's eat and try not to hurt each other." He understands that, but says, "I'm not the best person to ask for kindness. I'm glad your lover is gone, but I bet you'll find another man to be with." She looks away. "Please, Jack, this won't end well. Let's go eat. There's wine this time." Jack almost asks what they are celebrating, but keeps quiet and takes a glass. The next day, he brings groceries to help clean up. Everyone is hungry and focuses on the food. Jack looks around the table, and for a moment it feels like it did a year ago. Things are not what they seem. He eats and realizes he needs to decide what to do next. He wants to talk to Caroline about the kids living with him, but he decides to wait. After dinner, he and Ben play a game to find a tie. In minutes, he spots a red striped tie at the bottom of the laundry basket, and Ben lights up with joy. As Amy gets ready for bed, he asks her how school was this week. She tells him she is learning to play the recorder. He promises to get her some practice books. They dive into a new story. She reads to him, but soon she says, "Daddy, you're falling asleep. I'm giving you Mishka to hold because last time you fell asleep on my bed, you squished Panda, and he was really upset." "I won't do that again," he replies. He complains for a bit and then quickly falls asleep. The next day, they go shopping. Jack thinks that now that Damien is gone, Caroline believes that everything is back to how it used to be. He tells her that Ben needs a good school uniform, complete with everything he needs. Caroline spins through the stores, buying all the things he needs. They look for Amy's book on playing the recorder but can't find it. Jack tells Caroline he will find it in Brighton, where there is a good music store. Next, they go grocery shopping. He buys a big lunch for later and enough food for dinner every night of the week. Caroline lets him spend the money without complaining. He notices she is happy and remembers that there's only a week left of the semester. After that, the kids are supposed to stay with Jack. He wonders what Caroline will think about that. He knows she won't like being alone and wonders if she will try to see Damien in London. He mentions his plan to take the kids, and she quickly says she will take them to Brighton too. It will be nice to get some fresh sea air. I want to see where you're staying. The kids have talked a lot about the university. Jack is surprised, but he can't say no to her plans. He wonders what she is thinking. Does she think if she tries hard enough, she can win him back? Even Caroline must know that isn't likely. But when he really thinks about it, he realizes she does believe that. The kids are excited, packing their bags for the week. They chat and sing songs in the car as they leave town. Caroline feels happy, too. They are all going to see their dad, and it feels like a little holiday. She hasn't had the chance to enjoy time with her children in a long while. Maybe it sounds silly, but she is eager to see Jack's new place. She hopes he will be calmer there. Maybe they can at least be friends. She believes she can break through his hard feelings and work on their relationship. They used to enjoy being together, so why not again? The drive isn't easy. They take a wrong turn, and the freeway is closed because of an accident. It starts to rain. By the time they find a parking spot near the university, the kids are tired and hungry, and Caroline feels worn out too. "We need a place to sit down and eat when Jack gets here," she tells the kids, but they are already jumping out of the car, eager to show her around the campus. "That's where Daddy works," Amy says as she stands in the main area, proudly pointing at the concrete and glass building where the humanities classes take place. "Let's go to the cafeteria," Ben adds. "Dad says they have the best hamburgers there with 6 kinds of toppings, and the fries are good too. We haven't tried the hamburgers yet." He took them to the cafeteria, which was busy with staff and students. Many people were grabbing quick meals, chatting with friends, and going back and forth to the counters. After a while, they found an empty table. Caroline sent a text to Jack to let him know where they were. She hoped he wouldn't take long because they were hungry. The kids were kicking each other under the table and looking around for Jack. "Look, there's Hazel," Ben said, sitting up straight in his chair. "Hello, Hazel. I bet you're having soup, not hamburgers," he shouted. Hazel was talking to a woman with a braid. When she heard Ben, she looked up and smiled at Caroline as she walked over. "Hi, Ben. Hi, Amy. I hope you're both having a good day. In a few years, you can come to my talks," she said. Then she turned to Caroline and added, "Not the best place to relax here." "Hazel is Daddy's friend," Ben told their mother. "Actually, not quite," Hazel said, wanting to make it clear. "But I remember the fun picnic we had by the river. I brought soup and you taught me how to play football. You helped keep Daddy from being lonely," Amy said. No one knew how to reply to that. Finally, Caroline spoke up. "I should introduce myself. I'm Jack's wife and these are my kids. Do you work with him here?" "Not really. We are more like rivals in the same department with different ideas about teaching. He likes focusing on men's studies, talking about great men's successes." Caroline seemed pleased. "So you're not friends?" she asked. "Jack takes his work very seriously. He didn't tell me he was married, and I keep to myself. I would like Ben and Amy to think of me as a friend. We had a good time together. Please, take a seat. This is a tough talk, but I'm worried about Jack. I might be the reason for any confusion." "I wouldn't want you to worry about Jack," Hazel said, looking unhappy. She moved a chair over to another table, sitting a little away from Caroline. "What about the food?" Ben asked. "Hopefully it will come soon," Caroline replied, and started telling Hazel about how Jack had left his job at the bank to study. She admired his ambition, even with money problems and travel. Hazel looked serious, holding her bag close. The kids sat quietly, watching the two women. Caroline continued explaining how stubborn Jack could be when he finally arrived and stood next to the table, unsure of what to do. "Daddy!" Amy cried, jumping up and hugging him tightly. He bent down to kiss her, then ruffled Ben's hair. "I want to hear about the football game. Did you play goalkeeper? It was 6-0. We won, and my teacher said I did great." The women looked at each other, and Caroline leaned closer to join in the friendly moment. Jack walked to the other side of the table and sat down between his kids. "Jack, it's nice to see you," she said happily, noticing him looking at Hazel. "Hazel and I have been getting to know each other. It must be so exciting to work with all these smart people. I hope your drive was good." "It was fine. The freeway can be really busy in the morning," he replied. There was a pause, and he looked at each of them one by one. Then he suddenly got up. "I think I've made things awkward. It's better if I leave you women to chat." Kids, are you coming with me? But I wanted a burger, Ben protested. I'll go with Dad, Amy said, taking his hand as they left. Maybe I can have a burger later, Ben said, running after them. Well, that was clever, Hazel thought to herself. Tell me, Caroline, why did Jack come to Brighton? Did you break up? I mean, did you grow apart? Did Jack say that? That's not really true, Caroline replied. How about we get some coffee? The next part of the story starts with the sun shining as Jack takes the kids to the waterfront, where they eat burgers and fries from a small stand. While keeping an eye on the seagulls flying around, they eat even though the food isn't great. Everyone feels full and happy. Jack is worried about the earlier meeting and knows his kids are disappointed that their day isn't going as planned because they like being with their parents. Jack sends Caroline a text to let her know where they are. After eating, they take a walk by the water. Ben spots a crazy golf course with little bridges, tunnels, and painted monsters. He gets excited and insists they play. Jack agrees, and they grab the balls and clubs, ready to start the first hole. Ben takes it very seriously, planning his hits, but sometimes trying too hard. Jack helps Amy by holding her shoulders and showing her how to use the club. After a few misses, they begin to have a lot of fun. Ben works hard but manages to win on the last hole. Feeling hot and thirsty, they look for ice cream and find Caroline sitting on a bench watching them. You looked so happy, she says. I needed a little break, so I watched you play. Jack, I'm really sorry for what happened. It was an accident, and I didn't mean to hurt you. I wasn't ready to see Hazel, and I felt embarrassed, she continues. That's okay. It wasn't your fault, he replies. We had fun without you. I'm going to get the kids some ice cream. They want to go to the beach. They sit on the pebbles at the edge of the beach. The kids take off their shoes and socks and run into the waves. Caroline sits next to Jack on her jacket and closes her eyes against the sun, watching the children play. You gave up on us, didn't you? She asks him. I guess you want a divorce, right? I feel really sorry for the kids. It's clear that Hazel wants to talk to you. Jack thinks carefully about what to say. Maybe getting a divorce is a good idea. I told Hazel about Damien and made it clear that I want to stay with you. She seemed confused about my feelings. If you want to know, she is on your side, but I won't let you leave. I will fight for you until the end. She doesn't need to know about our complicated life. I want to make sure we understand each other. I won't let you run away. Is this really happening? You're right. It's over between us. I'm glad you figured things out in the end. It was over for us as soon as you stopped focusing on our life together. I want a divorce, but that's not what matters most right now. What's most important is to make sure the kids are okay. I'm trying to think clearly and do what's right. I believe it would be better for them to stay with me for a week next semester. There are good schools here, and the after-school programs are cheap. Besides, my job is more flexible than yours. Are you trying to take them away from me? This is about the kids, not about you. You need to think about what's best for them. Leave me alone. You have Damien. Focus on him. Think about someone else for a change. Please, Jack, I want you to reconsider. My relationship with Damien was going to happen. I would have been afraid to say no to his love. It was meant to be, and I didn't gain anything good from it. But please don't punish me for trying. We can go back to how things used to be. I've learned my lesson. So have I. I don't want to live with someone who hurts me when it's good for her. I won't do it. Not even for the kids. They deserve more. I never betrayed you. Even now, you haven't given up on Damien. You're just trying to save yourself. You still think about yourself instead of the kids. You never thought about how your actions affect others. What you did was careless. It doesn't matter that I'm married. I need to show respect to my wife. You are fun to be with like you used to be, but now I don't respect you. It's not about feeling guilty. Maybe you can't stop yourself. I just know it will be bad for me if I stay with you. You should be wearing a warning sign to keep people away. She starts to cry. When the kids come running back, she gets up and runs down the steps so they won't see her tears. The kids don't notice anything. They are having fun at the beach and want Jack to come look at the dead jellyfish they found. He goes with them, and Caroline heads home when they get back to campus. She doesn't wait for Jack, but looks around the apartment. The next morning, Jack makes a big breakfast of bacon and eggs for Ben and Amy. While they eat, they talk about how to enjoy their day. Jack feels nervous. He wants his kids to have fun, but he also needs to work on notes for a meeting with the professor about his research. They are sitting at the table finishing breakfast when the doorbell rings. Jack is surprised to see Hazel outside. She smiles and holds out a single red rose. "This is how I feel about you, Jack. I'm really sorry." Jack takes the rose, unsure of what to say. She asks, "You don't like gifts? I don't usually admit when I'm wrong or give roses. But that's why I'm here. Can I come in? I hope everything is okay and we can start fresh." Jack is a bit shocked but says, "Of course you can come in. I'm sure you want to see the kids." "I'm sorry," Hazel says. "I made a big mistake. Now just relax. I'm not here to hurt you." She takes his hand and kisses it, then walks into the kitchen to greet the kids. Ben is thrilled to see her and lets her give him a kiss. "I saw you kissing Daddy. You're his girl," he teases. "You couldn't know that unless someone told you," Jack says, feeling shy and uneasy. It's like when kids tease a boy at school about kissing a girl. They know he won't like it. "But we saw you in bed together," Amy says. "Does that mean Hazel is your girlfriend?" Jack quickly replies, "That was a mistake. Letting you see us was a mistake. But not being together." Hazel adds, "My body was right, but my mind was confused. I can't trust my mind." She continues, "Amy, you have a great dad. He was there for me when I needed him, but I pushed him away when he wanted to help. I will always regret that." "Of course my dad is great," Amy says. "He tells the best stories and knows what every word means." Jack interrupts, "But I'm not a kid." Hazel says, "I met you the other day for a drink. You worked hard to stick to your beliefs, which is good. It's just that our beliefs don't match. Come sit down and eat breakfast. It's scrambled eggs and bacon," Amy says. Jack warns, "You have nothing except tomatoes fried in bacon grease. We didn't expect a vegetarian for breakfast, and I want my kids to eat balanced meals." Hazel replies, "I only want coffee, but can we sit down first?" Jack sits at the table and she settles on his lap, wraps her arms around his neck and kisses him. "Maybe we should go," Amy says. "They don't want us here." Both adults say no. Hazel assures, "I'll behave, but I had to show your dad how I feel. I can be foolish sometimes, and I've been really foolish this week. I hope Jack can forgive me." Ben jumps in. "Dad doesn't mind when I mess up. He always forgives me. But when he's angry, it feels strange when he yells." "Ben," Jack says gently. Jack feels out of place as Hazel talks about their plans for the day. She seems so comfortable with her family, and he's unsure of what she's thinking. He doesn't want to bother her and wonders if things have suddenly gotten better between them. He's still angry because she turned him down, but he's also happy to have her nearby, and he can't help but look at her. "Did you change your mind when you saw I'm friends with the Vice Chancellor?" he asks her. She glances at him to see if he's serious. "In your dreams. I'm a full-time teacher here with graduate students. You're just a student with a few hours teaching freshmen. I don't get impressed very easily, especially not by people trying to get on my good side. But your costume looks great." They tease each other and both start to relax a bit. Jack thinks about putting Hazel to bed, and he's surprised to see how happy his kids seem. Maybe they can sense something good in the air. They decide to go to the beach, a place they hadn't visited since Hazel's father passed away. Jack will work on the beach while Hazel watches the kids. It's as if Hazel's past absence is just a far-off memory. They gather food for a picnic, and when everything is packed, they drive to Hazel's house for a windbreaker and a blanket. The sun is shining, and it looks like a warm day ahead. The beach is mostly empty, and they set up their spot. Jack opens his laptop. The kids play with buckets and shovels, and with Hazel's help, they start building sand castles. Jack tries to block everything out, even noticing Hazel in her swimsuit, and focuses on his work for an hour. After that, they have a picnic, and Jack plays badminton with everyone, including Hazel, who Amy playfully mocks for not being very good. Then Jack works again, keeping an eye on the children. Hazel relaxes under the sun with her eyes closed. The kids are busy protecting their sand castle from the waves, and then Jack and Hazel share a kiss that feels unreal. "Jack, you're a married man with kids, and I'm still finding my way. I've always worked hard and never had time for love. This is all new to me, and I'm trying to figure it out. I was confused about my feelings for you. You were right. It's your values under pressure, not mine. I shouldn't judge you. I let my feelings cloud my judgment. I've never felt this way about anyone before. I told myself not to trust these feelings. Then your wife told me what she did to you, and all I could think about was how much you must be hurting. You must be going through so much. I felt sick thinking about your pain and that I might be adding to it. It didn't take me long to see who was really in the wrong. I can see how well you care for your children, every one of them, including Caroline. You are so patient, even with everything she has put you through. You always think about others before yourself. I should have recognized my feelings for you sooner, but I couldn't admit them. I also couldn't just say I was sorry. I was scared of you. I was scared of what you would say. Scared you would turn me away. Scared of making a mistake. Sure, I've had boyfriends before, but they didn't mean much to me. They only confirmed what I thought I knew about relationships. They were crazy, painful, and always ended badly. With you, I felt out of my element. I reacted with my own silly ideas about how to act, trying to show that I could stand my ground and wouldn't put up with any nonsense. I didn't pay attention and was blind to what was happening right in front of me. I was being foolish. Listen, Jack, let's stop pretending. I came back because I love you. It feels really awkward and it makes me embarrassed all the time. Maybe I couldn't even admit to myself that I loved you. Can't you see? This is hard for me to say, but I need to know how you feel. If it makes you uncomfortable and you wish you had never met me, just say it. I don't like feeling confused. I want to know where I stand. Jack listens in shock and quickly tries to think. That rose you gave me? I'm as sentimental as a little girl, Amy. I'll keep it hidden in my book so no one will find it. I'll treasure it forever. Jack kisses her and gently wipes the tears from her face. You are a smart woman. You know I love you. But you also know I am confused. I can't believe how lucky I am to have met you, but I fear that part of what happened to Caroline is my fault. I don't think I'm ready to love you. I'm also really afraid, and not without reason, that this is all just a dream and you will vanish as quickly as you came. I'm still married to Caroline, and that feels like a huge problem. I worry about the kids. I worry about my job and my research. I worry that I might break under all this pressure. It doesn't seem like the right time to fall in love, but then again, I can't help how I feel. I have more experience than you. I trust my feelings. I know I love you. I couldn't be happier. I just want to hold you tight and never let you go. He makes good on his promise, kissing and holding her until they both glance around nervously to check on the kids. The sandcastle is flooded, with water at their feet. The children have moved to another spot, frantically shoveling sand to build up the walls against the rising water. The sun shines brighter than ever. The sea looks beautiful, and the sandy beach feels so peaceful. In the next chapter, Caroline doesn't need to worry because she is alone, but calling Damien on his home phone still feels wrong. She decides to suggest they meet in London instead. Anything is better than spending the weekend by herself. Damn, it's me, Caroline. I hope you're doing well. What would you say if I came to London this weekend? We could go to a show and have dinner together. You know what? This is something we've always wanted to do. There was a pause before her partner answered. Look, Caroline, I don't think it's a good idea. I've been really busy since we last talked. Guess what? I made it through a week at my new job, but the problem with the unfaithful wife hit me again. Someone told my boss why I left my last job. They even showed him your husband's email saying I wasn't good enough for this new job. My new boss canceled my job because I didn't put all the right information in my application. He gave me a month's pay and said I was lucky to get it, so now I don't have a job. I'm on welfare now, and I don't have money to spend on expensive dates. I'd rather just hire someone for a cheap and simple time. That's awful, Caroline said. She was shocked by this news. I bet your horrible mugger of a husband is happy about this. Let's face it, Caroline, you're not good news. You're like the goofy person in a comedy who causes trouble wherever they go. Look, I'm really sorry about what happened. What if I try again to get Jack to admit he wrote that letter? Don't be silly. Why would that crazy man help his so-called loving wife, especially with her lover? Try to use your head for once. Yes, I'm trying to stay positive. I have a good idea. It would be much better if you came here. I'll cook for you and we can relax. You won't have to spend any money. I've had a busy week too, so it would be nice for both of us to just stay home and watch some movies. Come to my house? Do you think I'm dumb? What do you think we're going to do? Just cuddle in your living room and watch a DVD? Caroline said. You make it sound like I don't understand. You don't realize what we have. We always end up in bed. We have something more, much more. If we end up in bed, your crazy husband will find out and come after me. And then you'd probably sit with him and laugh about it. Jack isn't here. He doesn't care what happens. He has kids to think about. Stay with me and we can help each other feel better. Don't be scared, Caroline. We can make it work. To be honest, Caroline, you're not the person I'd want to help me when I'm down. When have you ever cared about anyone but yourself? If you're being nice, it's only because you want something. You never offer support. I always thought your husband did a great job putting up with your trouble and wild behavior. Let's be honest, you're good in bed, and that's it. I didn't know you felt that way, Caroline replied. Are you saying there was never anything between us? You know there wasn't. Everything else was just an act for you. A little excitement can make a week feel faster. We got together and had some fun. I was okay with that. It was what I wanted. But you had to act like it was more than just fun. Like you were playing a part, thinking you were so clever. You were happy as long as I praised you like a star and paid the bills. That was cheap of you, Damien. True, but cheap. They were quiet for a moment. Then Caroline asked, Are you saying it's over? You called me stingy, broke, finished. Nothing could feel more finished. It was a silly fling. Now I need to make my life simpler. You can walk away knowing you pulled me down with you. Caroline cried until she went to bed. Tears of sadness fell without her wanting them to. As she drifted to sleep, she thought about how she should have told Damien off. Most of her thoughts were angry. You liar! You made me believe you loved me while you tricked me. But lying in bed, where she had shared so much time with Jack, those thoughts confused her. Instead of feeling good about blaming Damien, she remembered Jack's words. Both were painful. It wasn't true. She had always loved Jack, but his words felt like betrayal. She remembered her own words. You made me think you loved me, but you didn't. The next morning, she woke up ready to take control of her life. She made a list of things to change. The list was long, but it felt good to write it. The biggest problem was money. The answer was clear. Sell the house and find a cheaper place. She would talk to Jack. He wasn't coming back, and he wouldn't mind. Then there were the kids. They were with Jack now. Should she let them go to school in Brighton? She wanted them with her. She hated being alone and wanted them close. But she knew they were happier with Jack. He was steady and dependable, which was what they needed. She knew she struggled to keep up with getting them ready for school, cooking, and bedtime. It was stressful and caused fights, especially at night when everyone was tired. The kids blamed her for Jack leaving, and they were too young for her to explain everything. The only break she got was when they were with Jack. He was right. She couldn't put her needs first. She tried to deny it, but when she thought about it, she realized they were better off with him. People thought badly of her, but she decided to be brave and do what was right. She planned to go to Brighton and check out the schools. Next on her list was work. She didn't like her new job and felt sure everyone could tell she was unhappy. Her co-workers, who used to act out against her, now showed that she no longer had power. They ignored her requests and spoke openly about it. She felt embarrassed every time she saw someone she thought knew about her job change. She imagined them chatting about her behind her back. Losing her power also made her lose her confidence. The only way forward seemed to be finding a new job, but she liked her salary and needed the money. Pride was the only thing pushing her to go to work each day. Then there was Jack. Deep down, she knew he wasn't coming back. If it weren't for Hazel, she believed she might have had a chance to win Jack back. She missed Damien a lot, but she knew Hazel had taken hold of Jack. He wouldn't escape from that soon. She felt sad about her lost marriage, but couldn't allow herself to grieve fully because it hurt too much to admit that she had a role in its end. Still, she thought she could try to keep some of Jack's friendship and maybe earn back his respect over time. It was important for the kids and for her. She needed to take a good look at herself. She felt like a failure. The weekend after Damien had pushed her down, she drove 100 miles north to see her parents. They were happy to see her and listened to her story without judgment. They asked about Jack and the kids, trying hard to hide their letdown at not seeing them. She promised to ask Jack if they could visit Brighton to see the children, and they thanked her sincerely. She spent the weekend resting in bed, eating her mom's cooking, and felt a bit better when she returned home. Yet, she still felt the weight of her parents' disappointment. She knew they were trying to protect her feelings. That's what good parents do. Despite everything, she believed she had made the right choice. Her mistake wasn't falling in love, it was not keeping it private. When it was found out, she didn't persuade Jack to move on. Her feelings for Damien were real, even if he had hurt her badly. It would have been weak to ignore her heart. She took a chance and lost, but that didn't mean it was wrong. No one could say she deserved this. She took a week off work and called Jack, asking to see the kids and their schools. Jack asked how she was doing and if her money problems had gotten any better. He offered her the chance to stay in his apartment with the kids while he would stay with Hazel. She was thankful for this offer, realizing she should thank Hazel for being thoughtful. This week turned into a time of strange situations. Jack tried his best to help her feel better. He wanted to avoid any awkward moments and make her more comfortable. At first, she thought he was being nice to persuade her to agree to the divorce he was discussing, or maybe for the kids. But then she understood it was more about Hazel. Jack wanted to prove to Hazel that he could be kind and help someone who needed it. In the evenings, Jack would come over for dinner because the kids wanted their parents to be together. They would all sit around the table where Ben and Amy would make their parents say nice things to each other. And they did. Jack didn't shy away when she came near, and they would kiss each other on the cheek when they said hello. He asked her about her job, and she talked about the changes she was experiencing. She didn't go into details, but he shared his work on research and how he might get more teaching hours. The kids listened closely to their parents, and she wondered what they thought. They knew Jack cared for Hazel, so they must have realized that their parents could never be together again. She also knew they loved Hazel because they talked about her all the time. Their lives had turned upside down, and the kids might have thought it was good that Hazel was in their lives, finding something bright in the middle of the chaos. She and Jack agreed to sell the house and share the money. They talked about the divorce and decided to do it in a way that would keep it simple and cheap. "I'll agree to this because I know it's what you want, Jack," she said. "I'd rather stay married to you, not just for the kids. I'd wait and see if we could find a way back to each other one day." "Too much has happened. You can't undo what's done," Jack replied. He brought food and wine for dinner. He suggested fun things to do with the kids and asked how she was doing. There was no mention of Damien. She wanted to tell him it was over, but why bother? Jack was moving on, and knowing he had won would make him feel better. They talked about schools, and she visited the ones on the list they had made together. Again, Jack was right. The kids would do better in Brighton. It was a strange week, full of ups and downs, but oddly happy. She invited Hazel for dinner, and while Jack played with the kids, she and Hazel worked together in the kitchen, peeling potatoes, making gravy, and cooking. Jack watched them with a bit of confusion, but everyone seemed happy. Hazel showed no signs of anger or jealousy. Jack now allowed Caroline to kiss him and even hugged her sometimes. He smiled awkwardly, and Hazel smiled back, sure of his feelings. Sitting at the table with a glass of wine, laughing at the kids' stories, she couldn't help but see how ironic her life had become. When she had been in love with Damien, she had wanted Jack to accept him. Now, the roles had shifted completely. Her partner was gone, and she had to smile while her husband kissed his new girlfriend. Even with all this pain, she enjoyed dinner and invited Hazel over again. But she went to bed all alone, haunted by feelings of jealousy and anger. Her family was taken from her, leaving her feeling empty. Other people seemed happy, but she was not. The house was sold quickly. She gave away most of her things because Jack didn't want any of it. What was left? She had no place to keep it. Her plan was to rent a small apartment, but then she quit her job and moved back in with her parents. They welcomed her back, gave her old room to her, and cleared another room for her kids. Her dad even gave her some pocket money and paid for gas so she could pick up the kids. She found herself back where she was 15 years ago, waiting to start college after finishing high school. Living with her parents made her feel resentful and lonely. She felt poor and didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. With nothing to keep her busy, she tried to reach out to old friends from school who still lived nearby. They now had big houses, successful husbands, and lots of noisy kids. One time, she shared how her marriage ended, but her friends couldn't understand, so she never spoke about it again. Eventually, she found a job as a secretary in an accounting office. It was boring and didn't pay well, but it helped her avoid feeling like she had to rely on her parents. Now the kids stayed with Jack during the week. She would visit them or pick them up on weekends. On school breaks, she brought them back to her parents' house and did her best to make them feel at home. Still, She worried they would rather be at the beach with Jack and Hazel, who seemed to have a fun life. One day, Amy said she was a vegetarian and wouldn't eat her grandmother's cooking. This surprised everyone until the next day when Amy said chicken and cheese were okay for her to eat. Caroline was still living at her parents' house when the kids started a new school year, and Christmas had already passed. She felt sad and stuck. Loneliness, boredom, money troubles, and long drives to get her kids left her feeling tired and unable to make any positive changes. She knew the real issue was that she was afraid of her future. She felt like a failure and lacked the confidence to change her life for the better. Her parents treated her like she was having a tough time, not knowing how to help because they didn't want to make her feel worse. Then, the divorce was finalized, and it felt like just another sad day. She left home to keep her parents from feeling her sadness. The funny thing about her new life was that what she liked most was visiting Brighton. She went to Brighton the Friday after her divorce. She barely saw Jack because he had evening classes. Afterward, he took the kids home for dinner. When she got back to her parents' house, Amy announced, "Daddy and Hazel are getting married." There had been no talk about it before. Caroline felt a heavy silence in the room. She saw her parents looking at her and she finally said, "They must be very happy, but I'm surprised." "I didn't know Hazel wanted to get married," Caroline said. "That's because she's having a baby," Ben replied. "How do you know that?" Caroline asked. "I overheard Hazel and Daddy talking," Ben continued. "I hope the baby will be my real brother and not just a half-brother." Caroline's parents went quiet again, waiting for her to say something. Caroline took a moment to collect her thoughts. "It's not like that, Ben. Half means our family is split in two. You're half of my family, and Jack and Hazel are the other half. So I have two families, one here and one in Brighton." Ben felt like shouting at Caroline, but he kept his voice quiet. "And I've had two loves, but two is not the same as one. Now I have no one to love." Caroline felt heavy, as if a big weight was on her. She realized her selfish choices were falling apart. Everything she thought she gained with Damien cost her so much. She lost her home, her job, and her husband. Now she was back at the start with nothing to feel proud of. In those 15 years, she had children, but only half of them were with her. They looked at her with sad, angry eyes. They blamed her for driving their father away, and they would never forgive her. She looked at the faces around the table. They all understood what had happened, but she couldn't accept it. "The baby could be a girl," Amy said. "If she's only half my sister, she could be half someone else's too. I won't care." Caroline quickly left the table and locked herself in her room. Alone in bed, she cried all night. For the first time, she saw that she hadn't just been unlucky. She had made mistakes. Everything she thought was a win felt small now. It was like a gambler winning on a bet, exciting at first but leading to a bigger loss later. She knew she was paying a high price for a short moment of happiness. The next morning after breakfast, Ben sat with her, feeling upset and unsure of what to say. "Mom, do you like being alone?" he asked. She shook her head. "Is Hazel your friend too? I think she's really nice. Are you going to get married again, like Daddy?" Caroline wanted to say no, but instead she answered, "I'll do my best to make sure you see Jack and me as often as possible." She understood that it was easier for Ben to get along with Hazel than if she had to introduce him to her boyfriend. If she had a partner, she was sure Jack wouldn't want to spend as much time with her, which was what the kids really wanted. She didn't like it, but whenever she suggested that the kids do something fun, one of them, usually Amy, would ask, "Can Daddy come too?" She often said this even when she knew he worked far away. At night, she worried about something else. Her children loved her as their mother, but they really trusted Hazel. Hazel always made sure they were safe while she was away. They relied on Hazel, and that made sense to them. They learned to care for Hazel, and when she got older, they might only visit her because they felt they had to. Hazel would be a grandmother to their kids. She was behind it all. She had no one else to blame. She had suffered too. She knew that she could never rely on a relationship where both people support each other. Trust needs to be strong and honest from both sides, but they would try their best to do what was right at the right time. People often do wrong things, not because they want to hurt others, but because they are too focused on their own needs. She couldn't trust herself in another relationship because she wasn't sure if she could stay good. Caroline didn't want to go to the wedding, but she told Jack that she would look after the kids while Hazel and he were away on their honeymoon. When the wedding invitation arrived, it surprised her in a good way. It felt better to be there than to be alone. She felt she should go for the past and for Jack and her kids. Other than spending time to look nice, she didn't get ready in any special way. Staying calm was her main goal. It was a simple ceremony at the registry office with a small party afterward at a university hall. Hazel's family and some of her co-workers were there, but Jack didn't have anyone. His parents were gone, and his friends had disappeared after the divorce and job changes. As Caroline moved among these people, most of whom didn't like her, she felt like Jack's only friend. It made her feel a bit like a ghost from the past. She saw Jack kissing his new bride, which was normal. But there had been a weird moment outside on the steps when they were taking pictures. At first it felt strange, almost like a bad joke, because that picture reminded her so much of her own wedding with Jack, which had been on their shelf for 10 years. The same kind of picture was happening again, with the bride in the middle, shining with joy, and the groom looking proud and unchanged. Common sense told her that wedding photos all looked alike, showing a simple kind of joy. She tried hard to hide her sadness and wiped away her tears. The photographer wanted the bridesmaids and guests to come and join the bride and groom, but it felt like a scene from a bad dream. Everything looked familiar, but at the same time it felt different. This was her family, but it wasn't really her family. She watched her son, looking strange in his first suit with slicked back hair, and her daughter, dressed in a pretty folk outfit with ribbons and flowers in her hair, ruffles, and a long skirt. Frustrated with herself, she began to cry again. Tears fell from her chin. When Mimi asked if she was okay, she smiled and said her tears were from happiness for the kids and for Jack. She knew she had to stay until the end, but she couldn't drink anything because she had to drive. Most of the time, when she wasn't with the kids, she felt alone, sitting with Hazel's mother. They talked easily, sharing nice things about Jack and how great he and Hazel were together. She wasn't sure if Hazel's mother really understood her. Besides admiring Jack, they were both feeling sad inside. She kept her distance from Hazel's co-workers, who would jokingly comment about Jack's ex-wife. Jack joined her for a little while. He was kind, telling her how nice she looked. He thanked her for being there and praised how well the kids were doing. "How are you doing, Jack, the second time around?" she asked, hoping her voice sounded okay. "Good," he said honestly. "I'm a survivor. I'm alive and happy. I have a great job. The kids are happy too. I have a beautiful wife who is expecting our baby. What more could I want? I regret how things turned out between us. I've made mistakes and I'm sorry for hurting you. I've had my own struggles. I know looking back doesn't help. We need to leave the past behind and appreciate what we have now, Ben and Amy, and be ready for what comes next. Something wonderful could happen to you just like it did for me. Don't you see? Being open to life brought me Damien. I need to find a job, then I'll keep things simple. I want to work, spend time with my kids, and improve myself. Maybe I'll grow up. I hope we can stay friends. I'm excited to meet your baby. One day, I hope I'll be ready to be with someone special, and if we can find love again, that would be great. What I'm saying is, don't lose hope. Take life one day at a time, but do what's right. You've always been the sensible one, Jack. I was so proud of you when we got married. I took it all for granted. Stop it, Caroline. I'm no saint, and you know it. Forget about the past, and let's just be friends." He felt happy. Happy people can be hard to handle. They just don't see the problems. It was the end of a strange day. The kids were in bed at Hazel's house, and Caroline was sitting in front of the TV watching her favorite show. Hazel thought it would be a good idea for Caroline to stay with the kids while they went away on their honeymoon. It would save money and be better for the kids. Jack didn't have a place to stay on campus anymore, which was a relief. Caroline's parents loved their grandkids, but they were tired of their upset daughter always taking care of the kids on weekends. Caroline needed a break before trying to sleep. She didn't see Hazel as a rival, but she still felt down being in the house, especially since the kids reminded her she was just a guest. They showed her where things were, how to turn on the heat, and how the coffee maker worked, even though she could have figured it out herself. She felt bad about it. She walked around the house looking for hints about Jack's new life and how it was different from their past. Had he really liked sourdough bread more than white bread all along and she never knew? Or did he care for Hazel so much that he pretended for her? And those slippers by the front door? Did they really belong to Jack? The next day, she focused on playing with the kids, and they all had a great time. They went to the waterfront, tried out the rides, and played crazy golf so Ben could show her how good he had become. He and Amy were excited and happy to spend time with her. Their lives would be perfect if she could somehow stay with them forever in their new home. But they all knew that was not possible. While the kids were at school, she looked for a job. If she could find work nearby that paid enough, she could see the kids more often, spend evenings with them, and take them to school, being a real part of their lives. Soon, she found a job a few miles from the coast in Hove. She would be a shipping manager for a small online company selling brass store furniture. It wasn't the best job, but it was better than what she had before. They needed help badly, and she planned to start work the following Monday. When Jack and Hazel came back after a long time, she felt hopeful about the future. The next day, she found a 2-bedroom apartment above a store on a busy street, though parking was tricky. Once she got settled, she could search for a better place to live or maybe buy one with the money from selling the house. She needed to do this soon because Ben and Amy couldn't stay in the same room for long. Her new job was tough. She didn't share much with the other workers, but it was a chance for a new beginning, and no one had any strong ideas about her yet. She didn't know anything about their business, but she was eager to do well. Even though the job was new to her, she quickly found many things to learn and realized she could do it well. By the end of her first week, she had a long list of ideas for her boss. It felt good to have things to do again, and her coworkers hoped she could help make their work better. Now she could join school events and keep the kids with her for the night during the week. Life felt more normal. There wasn't a lot of fun to be had, but working and cooking for the kids became enjoyable instead of a burden. Parking was a struggle at the entrance of Amy's school, and she squeezed her car into a tight spot when she tried to leave. She noticed she had blocked the man in the car next to hers. She backed up and got out of her car to wait for her daughter. The man got out too and smiled at her as they stood by the school's fence. "Like being at the zoo," he joked, looking at her. "I wish they would let the kids out on time instead of making us wait." "I'm just glad I'm here on time," she replied carefully. She could tell the man was interested in her. He seemed nice, strong, and simple, like someone who cared, but she felt no interest. No wish to engage like she had with Damien before. A friend would be nice for studying and talking, but the thought of getting close to someone worried her. She didn't want to promise anything and feel like she wasn't enough. "The best part of my day," he continued at the school gate, "is meeting great people like you. It's the calm before the kids come when anything can happen." He looked at her, and she gave a slight smile. "He's trying hard," she thought, "but I don't know what's wrong with me." The man must have felt something since he stopped talking. Then Amy came out and spoke to a little girl who turned out to be the man's daughter. He looked at her, thinking this proved they could be friends. But she smiled and got into her car. It felt like something was broken inside her, making it hard to connect with others. But later she started to wonder. Maybe she just hadn't met the right guy. Jack had set the bar pretty high. It was after Caroline's due date when Jack called and asked her to pick up the kids so he could take Hazel to the hospital. She hurried across town to gather the kids and brought them to her apartment. There was no news for a whole day, and she felt as tense as if it were her own daughter having a baby. When the phone finally rang, she let Amy answer it, and it was the news they had all been waiting for. Amy had a new brother named Oliver Graham, named after Hazel's father. Caroline picked up the phone to make sure everything was fine and to congratulate Jack and Hazel. She was happy to get an invitation to visit them anytime she wanted. So they went to see them and found Hazel feeding little Oliver Graham, who had no teeth and was bald. Caroline sat next to her on the sofa. In her arms were small Jack, who looked very serious. That's how it seemed to Caroline as she held the baby. Caroline felt calm in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Oliver Graham waved his little arms and his hand touched her finger. Jack smiled wide. Ben and Amy came closer and looked at their tiny brother in wonder. Their family felt complete. Her mistakes had hurt everyone she loved, except for Oliver Graham. He was perfect in every way. Caroline knew she had to be strong and stop looking back. Life was waiting for her to take a step forward. It's never too late to begin again, and this time she knew how to do it right. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.